6:30. We will call the August 1st Planning Commission meeting to order. First item of business is Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we need to do roll call, or do we just note that Darren's not here?
You want to note that Darren is absent.
Darren is absent
So far.
so far. And no word on if it's a true absence.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Next up on the agenda is role of the Planning Commission. I'll just leave it at that for the residents to read. And we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Any changes or corrections?
No.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Next up on the agenda is establish meeting and officer procedures.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this is new, or at least I don't remember having done this before. So, in the city code, you all are appointed 3-year positions, and every year you establish a schedule where you elect a chair and vice chair, as well as establish the schedule on July to July. So I personally do not remember having done a schedule in the past, but as you're aware, we ran into conflict this year with our 4th of July Planning Commission meeting falling on a holiday, which resulted in canceling the meeting. So the goal is to try to figure this out ahead of time, of either recognize conflicts and reschedule, or just cancel those meetings ahead of time. So within your packet is a calendar for 2025. The yellow squares are the regularly scheduled Planning Commission meetings, which are the first Thursday of the month. Black squares are holidays, and gray squares are dates where this room is not available, either because of a council meeting or another commission meeting. And as you might notice in the schedules, we have close to a conflict on July again. So I don't know what you'd like to do. I guess my suggestion would be to reschedule the July 3rd meeting to July 10th instead, the following week.
I would agree
Page
that
6 of your packet.
it's that would be a troublesome date, at least for me,
Yeah.
to meet.
Yeah.
The holiday date would be or the July 5th would be problematic for you, is that?
July 5th?
Yeah.
Saturday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not 5th, 3rd?
The 10th.
10th.
So it's currently.
No,
good
10th would
July
work.
3rd.
I think
10th will work for
Yes.
you right
yeah,
now.
as it sits, the 3rd would be
Yes.
challenging for me.
I would support just shifting that one to the 10th.
I have no strong feelings. I don't go anywhere. So I'll be here either way.
I would propose we can move it to I would propose we move it to the 10th, and then, I would like to see, John, if there's a need to not have a planning commission like we did in July.
Sure.
I
won't know that till June.
right,
Yeah.
month to month is more what I'm getting at. It was in be in favor of canceling meetings as we need. Everyone's busy enough, so.
Make a motion to move that to July 10th.
Second.
Do we want to make the motion to approve the calendar with July 10th?
Yeah, that
Yeah, I think that was your intent.
was my
Yeah.
intent.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. And then officers.
Yep. So previously, it's been a little, I'm going to say a little loose, so.
Yes.
The intent is that the commission would recommend a chair and vice chair every year, so this is serving July to July. However you guys would like to do it is up to you, if it's a voice vote or a secret ballot.
And correct me if I'm wrong, right now I am chair and Darren is vice chair, or?
That's what I recall.
That's what I recall.
Yeah.
How long have those appointments been established? Just a year, or has it?
Oh, it's for 1-year terms.
Yeah.
No, I understand. How long have you been chair and Darren vice chair? Just 1 year, or did you serve in those capacities the year previous?
I think it was
Been
October.
2 to 3 years?
Has it been that long? I don't know.
I'm going to say 3. 3-ish.
Well, no, because Paul Kangas would have been.
Okay, we'll say 2-ish.
Yeah, he didn't leave that long ago.
I think
How long have you
Darren,
been on?
Just since December.
So it would have been October-ish of last year. But
I think Darren's been vice chair for 1 year. I think Paul was vice chair previously. Yes?
I
No?
don't think I ever
Oh,
was.
okay.
No.
de facto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we. I
Peter's
don't
always
think
been here,
previously
You were.
we addressed it
Okay.
Yeah.
as formally.
Can I make a motion to nominate you as our chair for another 1-year term?
Second.
Do you accept?
I accept.
Okay.
Yeah, fine with me.
All right.
And then make a motion or vote then?
Yeah, we can vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, Peter.
And vice chair?
What if on that one, can we defer till Darren's here and or next month? In case he's got interest?
Well, or we can defer on both. I mean, we already passed the one. But
We did.
You haven't gotten a full term, right? You were in October, so we'll get you that full term.
All right.
That's what I think.
All right. We can make a motion. I'll make a motion to nominate Darren as vice chair then.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Darren as vice chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0.
This is why you can't miss meetings.
You should have made him the chair. All right. And John, did you have anything on procedures that you wanted to address, or is that just?
Robert's rules, but, I did not provide you guys with a book for Robert's Rules of Order, so this is based on your memory.
I think we generally follow it.
Loosely.
Yeah.
Do we need to do anything on that one?
No.
All right. We'll move on to the consent agenda. The only item on there is the Planning Commission minutes from June 6th, 2024.
No comments.
I'll make a motion to approve those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Open forum, public comments limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. Is there anyone here for open forum? Anyone online for open forum? Just verify.
Let's stop. Okay. I do not believe so. I'm going to have to go on memory. I believe we have one person attending that's for an item that's on the agenda.
All right.
Oh, well, maybe not. We do have one person. If there's anyone online that would like to speak, if you could just raise your hand or unmute yourself.
All right.
No.
Well, with that, we'll move into council update.
No, he was.
Oh,
Nate,
All
did
right.
you have anything on For, just a reminder, this is for non-agenda items.
Oh, that's not. Come on. Okay.
All right. All right.
We can move on.
With that, we'll move into council updates. Mr. Mayor.
There was a lot of them. They were busy 2 months. So June 11th, we had our initial budget discussion. I'm not sure I can summarize that. If you're curious, you might just want to watch it. Talked about West Territorial infrastructure. I think that was really focused on water on the west side, and ways of getting it farther west. Talked about the Dayton, the 2 intersections on either side of the interchange, as to mechanisms for getting it paid for and what we want to do with those. General consensus was that the southwest one should be entirely covered by the development, since they're the only ones that need it. And then the northeast one would be mostly covered by the businesses in the area, but the city would have to kick in some. And then there was a discussion about the EDA getting their over the years their founding documents were mishandled. So we basically set up a plan to redo those founding documents just to kind of clean that up. We approved a police retention incentive. That was June 11th. June 25th was, we appointed the planning and one of the park commissioners. We had 2 openings in parks, only one reapplied. But later on, I think in one of the subsequent meetings, we did have 2 applicants, and I'll cover that when I get to it. Braeburn Trails, 2nd edition, that was approved, final plat. And then there was an encroachment issue. I don't remember if you guys had covered it in previous meetings, but there was landscaping in the right-of-way. That was not really a big deal. Final plat on NDA on the Sundance Greens, 11th. The IUP for the chickens, we approved that. Bluestone Properties concept plan, that went over about as well as it went over here. Not at all. There was just too many problems with it. Even though it was a concept plan, there was no vote, but we made it clear that it would need a lot of work. And plus, it's, as you guys had pointed out, it's in the wrong staging area. A lot of discussion on the Shaney concept plan. That was the large lot thing on those 104 acres. And that didn't end up with any direction, really. But I think pretty much all the council was in favor of moving forward. It's just a matter of how we can mechanize it. There was some discussion about another ag zone. And then it devolved into the 10 acres versus 4 question. DCM Farms, we were pretty much along the same lines you guys had when you looked at it. I think there was a discussion that there would not want to be any apartments. But as I had mentioned at the last planning commission or the last council meeting, the Met Council is close to pushing us to 4 per acre. And so that might help us get some of that density somewhere. Pulte Development Concept Plan, that followed pretty much the Planning Commission's discussion. We did approve the driveway aprons. That was also I think a 3-2 vote. Or was it 4-1? It was.
I don't remember.
It was the same.
I saw 4-1, I thought.
I think, well, yeah, it was 4-1. That's right.
Henderson, I think.
Yeah. And we went to July 9th. There was a work session on long-term plan, just getting equipment in there and figuring out where things needed to be. That was a long, detailed discussion. Three Rivers Park gave us an update. We talked a little bit about, we have some extra pavement management dollars, and there was some discussion about paving the parking lot down here at the park, but I think what we're gonna do is wait and see what they're paving, is it, John, they're paving the road or what?
We got lucky, so we have a road project that came under bid pretty significantly. So
Right.
the discussion was, can we do something else with that savings?
Can we piggyback or something? What else? Magnus Veterans Foundation is having an event this late summer, and they had a formal request to waive fees, which we approved. That was the 9th. And then finally on the 23rd, another long discussion on the budget. And then a somewhat lengthy discussion on the large assembly permit. There was some more direction given, but that's going to be coming back, I think, next meeting or the meeting after. And then the park commissioner, we did appoint a new person to the park commission. I will probably butcher her name. I think it's Kaya Chambers. So that's that.
Sounds good. Any questions for?
No questions?
All right, moving on to item 9, public hearings. First item is interim use permit for home extended business, 13551 Norwood Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, let's see how this works. Okay, so the first item, as you pointed out, this is interim use permit for home extended business located at 13551 Norwood Lane. So this is the next street over from City Hall. The applicant is Nathan and Megan Yancy. They are proposing to build an accessory building which would be used for a homeschool cooperative. So this is the business. The building would also be used as garage space. So again, the property is about 2 acres in size. The accessory building would be built somewhere in the northern area of the property for the school cooperative, and I don't believe we have anything that's like this that I'm aware of in Dayton. They're planning on having about 20 students. The school would be operative 3 days a week. Based on the R2 zoning district and that property size, they're limited to about a 2,000 square foot building. The critical areas for this application, as mentioned, the city code allows 1 driveway per property. So either the existing driveway would have to loop around to the new building or abandon this driveway and construct a new driveway out to the street. And then also, being that this building would be occupied by people, there's other building regulations applicable to this that would not be applicable if it were just a garage. But all that's related to the building permit, not the interim use permit. As with all interim use permits for home extended business, there is a 5-year expiration on it. So the applicant is here to answer any questions. Otherwise, I may also I should mention this is a public hearing. There was a notice that was published in the press, newspaper, as well as mailed to property owners within 500 feet of the project.
All right. Any initial questions for staff?
Yeah, I do have one. We received an email from the applicant kind of clarifying the purpose of the pole building to satisfy city requirements to have a two-car enclosed parking space, not just for the co-op.
Correct.
Can you explain that a little bit? Because it looks like the home itself does have a two-car garage.
Yeah, so in the packet includes a photograph of the house. It's a little, picture's a little dark, so it's hard to tell what is what. The garage, there's an attached two-car garage that was converted into living space. And so
Okay.
currently the house does not have a functioning garage.
Okay.
That's not up to code though, isn't it? Aren't you
Correct.
required? Okay.
So every home is required to have a two-car garage, at least a two-car garage.
So how did that get approved then?
I wasn't.
Oh,
So it's, yeah, I would say that the garage is contingent upon the final of the garage conversion.
I have no initial questions.
Okay.
Yeah, that clears up my questions.
Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward and? Please state your name.
Oh, right in the chairs. Yep.
Please state your name and address for the record.
We are Nathan and Megan Yancy. All right, the address in reference is 13551 Norwood Lane North. Thanks for seeing us. We are longtime residents of Dayton. We've lived in Dayton dating back to 2011. We homeschool our kids. We have 6 kids. Last year, we decided to try to form a community of other homeschoolers, and we thought it would be cool for our kids to kind of learn with each other and together. And we found some families that go to our church, and we formed this group. We get together just 12 hours a week, 85 days total in the year. And we have 2 licensed teachers who happen to be parents of the students. We were contacted by the city and told that we need a permit because there is money exchanged because we pay the teachers for their time. So that's why we're here today. The building in itself is more so to satisfy the city's requirements for a 2-car covered space. Back in 2020, we did approach the city and apply for a permit and plans to convert our 2-car garage into additional living space when we lived at Norwood. Everything was approved. All the plans were approved. We were not informed of a 2-car covered garage space. We were contacted in October of 2023 and told that we needed to build an additional garage space. So that's the reason for the garage, and then we figured we kind of fit it to also accommodate the group gathering. So it's the homeschool co-op has been really a blessing to our family. It's great families, great kids. We have 2 phenomenal teachers. The kids have a great experience. Like I said, it's just 12 hours a week, 85 days total in a year that we get together.
Are you currently living at the address?
We are not currently living at that address, but we are in the process of moving to that address.
Okay. Because that's one of the requirements for home.
For home occupation.
Can I ask more from the city side? Do we know about the 2020, it was approved without the parking? Do we know what happened there? Or?
Yes, I couldn't, we've had enough staffing changes, I couldn't
Okay.
say it in great detail what all was missed.
It's a long story. But the bottom line is that the city met with the Yancys a couple weeks ago, and we are working through a lot of those issues.
Okay.
And this will, I believe, clean that issue up.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
What's the proposal for the driveway concern then of only having one access?
Yeah, so for the driveway, our plan is essentially to, what John said, to connect it to the existing
Okay.
driveway.
All right. Is the 85 days, like, so, is it like 5 days a week for like X number of weeks, or is it like just 2 days a week for the school year or something like that? Like, what's the cadence of when kids are coming and getting dropped off? 'Cause I'm sure
Yeah.
some concerns are traffic and, you know,
Yeah, so we meet Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
okay.
We start September 9th. We have quite a few breaks in between, but we go on an extended break on December 12th and then resume on January 9th, I believe it is.
Okay.
What is your, it mentions, I'm assuming you'll have a bathroom because you've got kids. They will need to use restrooms. And it kind of mentions that it may or may not hook up to the current septic system. Have you explored that? Do you know what's going to happen
We haven't
there?
gotten that far yet. I think we haven't gotten to the point of like actually talking details of the building. We're meeting with the contractor early next week.
Okay.
And I think we'll get closer to that. But yeah, if there are any updates that we need to do to the septic system, that's something that we're prepared to do at that time.
It does mention that you do actually have access to the sanitary sewer along the north property line. Is that?
Yes, and I'm going to lean on Jason a little bit. So the property currently has a well and a septic system. There is a sewer main that runs along the north property. I don't know from where to where, but
I'm not sure the extent of it. It is in the
It's-
vicinity though.
it is. So my understanding, none of these properties in the area are connected to sewer, but it is available.
I thought that was a fairly deep,
I haven't.
oh,
I haven't looked at this project, so I'd have to dig into it.
From a sanitary connection standpoint, if they connect the outbuilding, the accessory building to the sanitary, does the house then have to be connected as well? Or can they have septic on that?
I don't know. I don't, yeah, the short answer is I don't know.
It's
That's-
something we should
yeah.
strongly consider, just with, half the property being connected, half not.
Right. I believe the septic system was put in 2022 or replaced in 2022? No,
No,
wasn't.
it hasn't been replaced since we've owned it.
Okay,
So
okay.
So it may need an upgrade just period, depending on how old it is, potentially.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So if it is also a two-car garage, and that's actually its first and foremost function, how much space does that actually leave for the school? If it's a 2,000?
Depends on how big of how much space is for the car. So, 2,000 square feet is about the size of an 8-car garage. So, I mean, it's,
Okay.
there's space.
Okay.
And the actual size of the building is still in question as well, so
It can be up to 2,000, but
Up
it
to,
might not
yeah.
be, okay. I have no further questions at this time.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Is this kind of a standard metal pole building that you're thinking of then, or
yeah,
what does it look
thinking
like?
metal pole building.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do we have standards that it has to match the aesthetic of the house?
It has to be the same
outbuilding?
color siding and roof,
Yeah.
but that can be kind of hard because pole metal buildings do not have as many color options as your house does.
Yeah.
So even though it might be light gray and your house is light gray, they might not match and you might not have a choice on that. But the code does say it has to have matching siding and roof.
Yeah.
And the house is black, so it shouldn't be too hard. We plan to have
That
the
you should
building
be okay.
black.
Yeah.
I thought that we used to at some point have a requirement that the slopes be consistent, although I don't know if we removed that or,
That wasn't,
you didn't see that?
I didn't see that when
Okay.
I just went through it
never
myself,
liked it,
so.
'cause I have a camper.
But I'm also zoned egg, and you guys are zoned residential, so there might be some, but for egg, at least it has to match color for the side and the roof. So those are the restrictions I was under. And it could be taller, I believe, than the existing house.
Not for this district, so it's
Okay.
limited to, I think it's 35 feet in height or the height of the house, whichever is smaller.
All Okay. Any other questions, clarifications before we open a public hearing on this?
No, not at this time.
All right. Thank you. We may call you back.
Thank you.
up.
Yeah, thanks.
7 o'clock, we will open the public hearing for this item. If you wish to speak on this item, please come forward and
What's that? It's Earth. I was going to say, where you getting that bird's eye from?
Google Earth.
name and address, please.
Robert and Paula Irvin, 12465 137th Avenue North. So, just before I get into my notes here, I'm just wondering, is there zoning that there should be an attached two-car garage or garage to the home? Is there does the city have a rule?
No, you do not have to have an attached
Attached
garage.
garage,
It can be
okay,
attached or detached.
Okay, all right, so, we live directly north of this proposed homeschool co-op business. We've lived in the area for 35 years and are one of the originals in this neighborhood and have lived and live on the corner lot. We are strongly opposed to this business being permitted in this neighborhood. One, this proposed business will be adding more traffic to our neighborhood. We already have increased traffic due to two developments that have been built by the access points to our neighborhood. One off South Diamond Lake Road, the other is to the west of Pine View on 137th. For some reason, cutting through our neighborhood gets you to one of the other streets faster. Two, we're concerned with the parking on the street and because of blind spots to vehicles and pedestrians. Even though they state that they will be dropping off, the dropping off will occur in driveways. We all know that doesn't always happen. And the concern with snow removal in the winter if these cars get parked on the street. Third, if vehicles are parked in the yard, will they have to be parked on a driveway? Will they be parking on the grass, as they have been done at this residence in the past? Concerns with vehicles leaking fluids, as we all have wells. And personally, I do not want to be looking at a parking lot from my backyard onto this property. If I understand the notes from the Planning Commission's agenda PDF, the hours of operations will be from 9 a.m. to 1, Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays. We are actually going to be retiring in a few years, and I am concerned about the noise. Also concerned that the number of students might possibly increase. They're saying 20. Could one day it just end up, oh, we have 25 now. And I would hope you guys would take that into consideration. There is a gully that fills with water near the proposed building site. Is a fence going to be required for this to keep people safe? That would be an added cost. We're just talking about the septic system. Is there going to be a need to increase this due to the additional people using it other than the family use? Seventh, in my understanding, is this family will be required to live at this address, and I'm wondering how this will be enforced. I really want to make that a point, that this isn't, if they say they're going to do it, then they need to do it. And will it be considered homesteaded? Or is it going to be considered a business? I'm not sure about that. So, and are they only allowed one business? I've seen that they're on social media from other people that they have had other businesses. And I'm wondering if it's going to be allowed, if they just have the one business. And it was I believe it was we haul your junk kind of business. So my thoughts for you as the Planning Commission is to please take the concerns of the families here today speaking against this home co-op or this homeschool co-op business seriously. We live here and we have to see this every day. Home co-ops can be run at churches, communities, community centers, libraries, not in residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jamie Wisniewski. My husband Mark, we live at 13600 Norwood Lane in Dayton, right across the road from the property as shown. Yeah, I have to be like Paula, get my notes together here. I know we're talking about the IUP, not necessarily the building, but I think the two go together, as we've already said, because the garage has been converted into a living space. So I have some questions that kind of concern the building and the IUP. So, let me see. I had some questions about the parking as well, to make sure. I know it says that they will be in the driveway and that they won't be on the street, but from what we've seen the last year or two, we have been seeing a lot of cars on the street. Now the driveway isn't big enough, so we do want to make sure that that is enforced, and how will the city enforce it if it isn't happening? There's also been a camper parked on the property, and I want to know if that camper is also going to be housed in this building, which will take up more space. And I think you already asked it as far as how much will be for the homeschool business and how much will be for garage itself. So I want to make sure that if that goes forward, that the kids have enough space, but that this is truly a garage, and addressing that issue as well. Let's see, what else? Okay, so the location of the building. It is near the wetland, and it does flood during the spring some, so we have to make sure that it is backed up off of that enough to handle that. There are gutters that go right, all the water comes down the road and it goes into there, so we have to make sure we're not disturbing the sewer system or the gutters that go into that wetland as well. I think that was a little bit addressed, though, when the proposed driveway will be the current one and not the new one. If we go with the new one, I'd like you to keep that in mind, that where the gutters are, we are, as a neighborhood, occasionally out there in the winter cleaning those gutters out to keep the water flowing down. On heavy rain days, the water does back up into our driveway. Not too bad, but occasionally it does happen. The size of the building, I think you addressed that. You said it would be 2,000 square feet.
Or
and the
less.
height- Or less, okay. That's good. The well and the septic, that is a big question for me. First of all, the building, how many bathrooms will it have? How many sinks will it have? Will there be a kitchen or an eating facility? My concern is it's going to turn into another living space, and we don't want a living space. So please make sure that is addressed as well. And also, then with that said, the septic, you said that the current one may need to be revised, or it could be hooked up to the city one. If the septic is going to be new, will that disturb the wetland? If you're going to connect to city water, would it disturb the wetland? Because I believe when that went through there, our property had the easement for it to go through, and then I think it was 12 feet down is what they had to dig before they hit water. So we don't want the wetland disturbed. And it's finally grown up nice and beautiful, and we enjoy our frogs and crickets and lightning bugs at night. So just wondering how that would happen if they had to do that. If you don't do that, as far as the septic goes, can the septic handle all of this? A new one maybe would have to do it. And the well, we all have well water, is that going to affect our wells if we add, again, how many bathrooms and everything else? And will the water table change anything for us. Do any studies need to be done about that if there is going to be another well on that property? If it is a septic that has to be an additional one, would it be a conventional or mound? I don't know. Do they even do conventionals in the city anymore?
I couldn't answer that.
Okay. No, it would be a mound?
It would
Okay.
To be compliant.
Because they're ugly. And our kitchen and our living room face right out to where this building will probably be. So I don't know how that'll go too. Will the driveway going in, will it be rock? Will it be concrete, blacktop, grass? What are they planning to do with that? The grass with the camper this year didn't work out so well. It got buried once. So I'm sure there's city ordinances that say what have to happen there. And is there going to be a turnaround property or a turnaround area for the parents on the property when they pick up their kids? And where will the teachers park? Since there will be 2 teachers at the place. I didn't see lighting considered for this. I know it's being done during the day, but again, this is where it crosses over into the new building. Will there be any type of lighting around the building at all, and what hours will it be on? We enjoy our night sky, the little bit that we can get, so that was kind of a concern. I think it said somewhere in the agenda notes that it's compared to large in-home daycares, and with that, it's a 12-person. So I'm not sure why we're expanding to 20, but I think we should stick with what the ordinance or the rezoning or whatever is to keep it at 12. And is the 12 additional, or does that include the families, children that are being schooled plus, and then whatever number to hit up to that number?
So just, I don't want to confuse the two. So home daycare is totally separate, and that doesn't require a permit. So, but we allow home daycares up to 12 kids.
Okay, I just saw it somewhere in the minute notes, and I wasn't sure how we got from 12 to 20 and how that was counted. Okay, thank you. Will all the schooling be done inside of the building, or will there be outside too? I'm assuming there will be outside. I mean, kids like to get outside and play. Since COVID, I work remotely, and I work 4 days a week from home, and the days that the schooling is on are the days that I'm home. So with the traffic and the children, I'm worried about the noise. I like to have my windows open, and that's a concern for us to make sure that the noise is kept low. I think someone else had said it a little bit different though, but if any of the ordinances or rules are broken and not followed, what recourse do we have? And do the neighbors have it? Can it be revoked? Is it the city? We've had this with the living space in the garage, and it's taken many months, and we still aren't there yet. So that is a concern for us as to if we go forward and it gets taken to an extreme, how do we take care of it? I think in our notes too, it showed that property value wouldn't be affected. I feel it will, actually, for our home, because we are directly across the street from where it will be. And I think 2 acres in Dayton is a really good thing, but 2 acres in Dayton with a business right across the street with people coming and going is not quite as desirable. So I think it will hurt our home value some. We're comfortable with having a building and a garage. We're all for it, so that's not a problem. I like homeschooling with kids. I don't think that's a problem either. It's just, I don't know that it necessarily belongs in a residential area with other people's children that aren't living on the property. Is that it?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to come forward?
So
Name and address, please.
Jeff Johnson, Gail Johnson, 12590 135th and a half Avenue North. So our property is right behind, you can see my pool right there. I'm right behind there. And we've had a lot of problems with the property and with the grass growing real long. And then we find out that he had a young lady renting his garage with no permit. It was not approved as far as what we could tell. From what we understand is he's in a lawsuit with them right now with her, that she's suing him because he kicked her out.
Yes, they illegally made her vacate the property because it was not up to code with heating and the electrical. And I work for a school district, and with kids being inside of a garage, what is that going to look like? You know, you've got gas-powered vehicles in this garage, you have students in that garage, and we're totally opposed to this.
Yeah, and they've said everything, that all the neighbors are all opposed to it. We're all opposed to it. We're not opposed to the homeschooling. I think it's a great thing for people to do. We're totally for that. We just don't want it in a business like that in our backyard.
Yes.
And all the neighbors are opposed to it. So we just wanted to say that. Thanks.
It's a residential area, and this is actually a business. And are they profiting off of this business? They say that they're paying teachers, but, I mean, this should be in their church, like other co-ops are, and in, like, businesses in these strip malls and that, not in a residential area.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
Hi, Paul Bencourt, Holly Hamilton, 13560 Norwood, where the property with the driveway straight across from the other driveway. I'm going to try and just go through my notes. Sorry, it's on my phone. My printer was uncooperative earlier. I think I don't want to reiterate a lot of the stuff that has been said, which I agree with. But for us, a lot of the concerns, again, I have no problem with homeschooling, with a home business. I understand that's one of the advantages. But the combination of the previous disregard for the rules and regulations that have been shown, in combination with sort of what that's resulted in, we're concerned that will lead into a nuisance. And as far as the property values go, we recently moved here because we really like the area, the 2 acres, and I have to say I wish I would have known there could potentially be a 20-person school across the street before I signed those mortgage papers. So in regards to the number of students, I'm a little bit concerned because part of the reasoning and approval was that 20 students was permissible because it's characteristic of the neighborhood to have 12 because of the home daycare. And I understand that's not necessarily the same thing, but I would argue that the zoning for R2 is for 90,000 square feet properties larger, which would make 2 acres the lower end of that. So I would argue that using the size of the property to allow twice of what is a characteristic for the neighborhood is kind of odd when properties are on the lower end of what's characteristic for the neighborhood, which is something that I believe would affect property values when people look at sort of the zoning regulations when purchasing the house. Also, I'm concerned about the homesteading and the home property actually being used. This isn't anything that, people are free to do what they want, but the Yancys do have another property which they currently live at in Dayton, which is 7 acres, and they built a custom home in 2022 and has a second home. Now it's a family of 8, and they're saying that they're going to move back into this 970 square foot home and have a 20-person school there. It seems unlikely that people would choose to do that, but I just would like to have certain assurances that first they're actually living there and watching over the property, because based on the way things have been done in the past with the rental, things didn't go so well without a lot of oversight. And that goes to the part with the parking in the school and how everything can come together. So basically, because of the unpermitted living space, garage being converted into living space, there's nowhere to park the cars. And in the month that we were here, the people renting the property at any point had 4 to 8 cars parked in the driveway as well as usually on the street, usually in states of disrepair. You can go still see there's oil stains on our side of the street and their side of the street. So the idea that without them having a more detailed plan and anything else, that we're going to have a 20-person business that if it's conducted in the same way, we're looking at 20 cars parked like in front of our driveway, which isn't something that's desirable. So in essence, I, again, have no opposition to the idea of a business. You know, if I want to have a business, I would like to be doing it. I would like to, you know, follow the rules, but I also would have liked to see some good faith measures by the Yanceys to show that they are going to, from now on, be following the rules, doing things within what's characteristic of the neighborhood in a way that won't decline property values. And so I would ask that, you know, we have some sort of confirmation that they actually have homesteaded the property before the approval, that they have detailed plans showing that they're not going to be out of permitting, that they have everything that's already been discussed, and that also the amount of students be lowered to 12, which is fitting with the neighborhood as the zoning was developed in the way that it is now. Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have one person online if there's no one else in the audience.
Is Nate here for
Yep, this item.
this item? All right, go ahead, and let's have Nate.
And I'm, just for Nate's testimony, we would like to urge the commissioner, excuse me, to not approve this permit on Norwood. These community members repeatedly violate rules, and we have no faith that they will change their ways and will be ongoing headaches for us in our city.
Anyone else in the audience here for this item? All right, with that, at 7:22, I'm going to close the public hearing. And open it up for discussion. Do we want the applicant back up? Right?
Seems like there was a lot of questions posed by the neighbors. That might be nice if the applicants were able to respond to those.
Would the applicants like to come back up?
I don't know if
Yeah,
I don't think you were taking notes, but I mean, you got the general framework of what your neighbors are concerned
I think,
about.
yeah, it's really unfortunate and disheartening for us because all of these neighbors who we've, you know, there's a couple that we've actually met and had an opportunity to talk with, and we knew when we previously lived at this residence. But everyone is very well misinformed. I'm not sure where people are getting their information about us as a family. We are very public because my wife does social media. So you know, we're an open book. We don't, you know, hide our lives. But as far as the city code violations, the things that they are hearing, which I can only assume that they're hearing from city staff, they are very well misinformed. Since we've lived in this city dating back to 2011, we've always followed the guidelines to the T. We've applied for permits. We've had discussions with city staff regarding our plans and what we want to do with the renovations or whatever we do with buildings, and we've only moved forward with those things being approved. You know, obviously the question was posed as to, we have a 7-acre property, you know, we built a brand new home, and we are doing something very unconventional, and it's very sad and a hard thing that we're navigating as a family. But we're surrounded by neighbors who have been very nasty to us since day one, since we bought the place in 2021. The final walkthrough, I was approached by one of the neighbors and told that we don't want you here. And this was before we even lived on the property. So we made the hard decision to walk away from a property that is our dream and move back to Norwood. because we had a really good experience there. I think that the neighbors that are here today that know us know that there was absolutely no issues when we lived at the property. I can't speak for what occurred when the property was rented out. But as far as there's no camper currently parked at the property. That was the previous tenant's camper. And as far as a lawsuit goes, anyone in the United States of America can sue anybody for anything. So we did get sued, but the judge completely dismissed it because there was nothing there. So I'm not sure where, again, people are being misinformed and getting wrong information. But like I said, homeschooling is something that we're passionate about as a family. These are 6, 7 other families that we're involved with that we know from church or are close friends of ours. We all have a lot of kids, so that's why the number seems bigger. But we get together in community, and I think that the state of Minnesota has no issues with homeschool co-ops. The state of Minnesota has no issues with people gathering on their own properties. So the city of Dayton shouldn't either.
So how many families incorporate those 20 kids? I mean, you have 6 of them.
Yeah, I couldn't. Yeah, we have 6 of them. 5 of our 6 are a part of it. I couldn't tell you. I want to say around 6 families total. But that's a complete guess. I would have to actually look at.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What is your response to your neighbors' concerns about traffic, parking? Like, how do you imagine if they're using your driveway, is there a turnaround? Like those kinds of questions that were being posed. Do you have comments about that?
Sure. Yeah. So our plan is that the driveway, we would extend the current driveway over to where the building would be. There'd be kind of like a bigger paved area. We would use blacktop pavement, and then it would wrap around to connect back to the driveway. These families, we do have 2 licensed teachers. Again, they're parents, so they park and they stay there. The rest of the parents drop off and they leave. They come back at 1 p.m. to pick up the kids. So it really is kind of just a really laid back experience. It's not, these kids are great. They spend some time outside, in nature. That's one of the main reasons why we want to use a home as opposed to a commercial space or a church building.
Are there requirements, John, for distance from the street for this driveway extension? There's a lot of nice trees in this property. I'm just curious where that driveway would go.
The short answer is no. It's the same requirements as any other house, so it's a 5-foot setback from the property line except where it meets the street.
Yeah. Okay.
So what, one of the things that I wasn't clear on, if approved, when would you start using this for homeschooling?
We would.
Or what's the plan?
Yeah, the plan is to use it as soon as it's completed upon approval. So in the interim, we are still kind of figuring out where we would land right now. We're supposed to start September 9th, so we're kind of still figuring that out.
Because I imagine, there's a process here of building permits, building application, construction materials, all that stuff. So,
Yep.
Next year is not unfeasible at this point. This year seems a little quick.
It's
it would-
a month. It's a month.
Yeah, well, yeah. We have no expectation that the building will be completed by September 9th.
Yeah.
I think we'll learn more from the contractor when we meet with him on Monday at the site. But yeah, again, it's kind of up in the air in terms of when everything will be completed and what that all looks like. But again, the building is something that's going up regardless. It's not It's not hey, if this is denied, then there's no building. It's going to be a beautiful building, by the way. I think, I've worked in real estate for over 15 years as a side business, and the property values would definitely go up in the area with a building like that, not something that would bring the property values down. And then also home occupation businesses such as this, which is essentially a small group gathering of people, have no effects on property values as well.
From a logistics standpoint, how does the city assure that they're living there? And then what are the consequences if they're not living there?
Sure, so if
That was
I
one of the concerns
could,
the neighbors
so
brought up.
in the resolution, there are 6 recommended conditions of approval, if I can just either read or summarize this. So, number 1 is the home extended business shall be limited to the proposed accessory building. The yard may be used recreationally. So the idea is that you're concentrating the activities in the building. I mean, you can still have kids out playing in the yard and whatnot. 2, prior to operation, the property shall be homesteaded by the applicants. 3, prior to operation, the home extended business shall comply with all building, fire, and zoning codes. 4, prior to operation, the applicant shall construct a driveway accessing the accessory building. And then number 5, prior to operation, the property shall comply with residential parking requirements, including a minimum of 2 enclosed parking stalls and 2 surface parking stalls. The accessory building or co-op may be used for enclosed parking. Alternatively, a separate garage may be constructed for required parking prior to operation of the IUP. So meaning if the applicant wanted to build just the accessory building for the school itself and build a separate detached garage, that would be fine.
Are they allowed 2 accessory buildings though?
Up to 3, yes.
Okay.
And then 6, the interim use permit shall expire in 5 years or with a change in property ownership, whichever is first. And that's with every IUP for a home extended business is a 5-year expiration. You can always apply for a new one.
And the IUP could be revoked if conditions are
Yeah,
not met
so
at any point
going
during
back
that.
to the original question. So yes, if these are the 6 conditions. So assuming that these are approved, if any of them are non-compliant, the council has the option of revoking the IUP with findings. So that's the key there. So findings mean, let's say if ownership changes and the school is still operating, that would be a reason or cause for revoking the IUP.
Let me ask you this, because it does, it says that the property shall be homesteaded, but to kind of get to the root of the point of whether or not they're actually living there, I know that's going to be really hard to prove anyways, but item number 1, the home extended business shall, it being a home extended business means that you must live there, correct? So if you don't live there, it's not a home extended business, IUP would
Yes, for
be
more
revoked
than
more or
6
less
months
from
out
that
of the year.
standpoint. Sure, okay.
Can I just say something? I'm not sure why there's question regarding us living there. I think then we're questioning our integrity as a family, which is very concerning for me, because then we're basing that off of what information exactly. We're moving to the property. We will be homesteading the property because it's in our best interest to homestead a property that we live in. So I'm not understanding fully the question on whether or not we'd be living in the property.
Sure, and let me clarify that. I'm not saying that you
No, I
won't
know
be
it's not
living
you.
there.
I'm just
Circumstances,
kinda responding
yeah,
to-
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not the root of my question. The root of my question was more, mechanics of it all, right?
Sure.
Because circumstances change,
Yeah.
I mean, you may have all intent to live in it, and you may very well live in it. Well, you may decide not to, and then at what point, how do the mechanics for the city work to then revoke the permit? You may very well come in and say, we don't live there anymore, and we're done
Yeah.
operating this, and we can revoke the permit.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So not-
absolutely.
Not
And
saying that in
yeah.
any way, just
Yeah.
kind of trying to think through the
At any
mechanics of
point,
it.
if we decide to move, that would be, that group would be moving with us.
Sure.
Going to our new location, so.
Because it's currently operating at your current, or historically?
Yes,
at
it
your-
was, we had it at our current residence.
Okay. I think sometimes for me, it's just more of having been an audience member with concerns about a neighbor, not knowing what my options are, it makes you feel powerless. And if I know, well, these are my options, it made me feel better about like, okay, well then I'm fine. Like, even though I'm still a little cautious, I know I have options. Like, that was my question is, I've been on the other side of things feeling like, well, what do I do if they break the rules? Like, what are my options? So just knowing that everyone has, like, because we're here for everybody, right? And so we want everyone to be comfortable and happy and have the best, like, we all love Dayton. We all want to live here and be happy. So, one question, my biggest, I would say concern is I'd like to see a more fleshed out plan. Like, where exactly does the building go? Where exactly is your septic going to go? Are you going to have to hook up to city sewer instead? Where exactly is that driveway? What is the screening going to look like? If you're going to have kids, and I mean, you want to let them just run around, are you going to put up additional fencing? So for me, I just would like to see a more fully fleshed out plan. Not that I think I'm fine with it. It's just, I'd like to see more details. And if you can get a pole building up in a month, in a week, man, that's up to you.
Again, we have no expectation on timeline.
Yeah.
We have no expectation that this is going to be ready by September 9th. The reason we moved forward with the permit is because the building is tied to the homeschool co-op, but if we decided to host these people in our home,
that would look different.
Okay, so I guess that's where we're kind of stuck. I'm not understanding the tying the building and the homeschool co-op together. And another thing I just want clarification on is we were told that the reason that we needed to apply for a home occupation permit was because money was being exchanged. Is that correct?
Even if it weren't. So it is essentially you have a business, whether it's profitable or not, it is none of the city's concerns.
Right. So I just so I'm getting clear understanding, if we decided to host small groups from our church or over at our house on a regular basis, that's something we would need a home occupation permit for?
No. So the
Okay.
key here is that it's a detached garage that, I'm going to call it a garage, that you're using. If you had a homeschool out of your house, that I think we'd look at that as being an administrative home business, and so you would not be here. You'd still need a permit, but it would not be reviewed by the Planning Commission and Council. So if you were hosting, say, a church group out of your house, there's no permit for that. I know right now we're up to a certain number of people, so I believe it's 50 that you'd be limited to.
Yeah, I just think that it's, I would ask the Planning Commission and our council to just be aware of how far we as a city are reaching in terms of the freedom that people have on their properties. It is our home. We do pay for it. We're not, these homes are not in the newer residential developments. There's quite a bit of space we're stretched out, which is why it's even something that we're considering. I just think it's something for us to put into perspective and consider here is how much freedom are we taking away from our residents to do the things that they love and to gather with the people that they care about.
Question for you, are any licenses required from the state of Minnesota? You had mentioned that the state of Minnesota is in favor of things like this. I know daycares are licensed and go through a lot of inspections and home visits and
Sure.
and all of those things. How is that for in-home school, like what you're proposing? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so there's no guidelines from the Minnesota Department of Education regarding homeschool co-ops. There is a form that all of our families fill out that indicates, one, that they're homeschooling and that there's a secondary instructor besides the parents that are going to be instructing the students. So all of our families fill that out. But the Minnesota Department of Education has no issue with this and no guidelines. I will also note there are a lot of other groups such as this that has, across the country, it's become a very popular thing. They're called micro schools. We don't refer to ourselves as a micro school, but we refer to ourselves as a homeschool co-op because we're all homeschooling families. But there is a micro school in the city that operates not too far from this residence as well. So that's just something else that I would ask to be taken into consideration.
As far as the question of why is it tied to the building, I would just, from my perspective, if I were building a 2-car garage that was only a 2-car garage versus a 2-car garage that also, like, it would be a very different building. So that's why, for me, I feel like the conversation is worth having.
Sure.
Because you don't want to sink all this money into a much bigger structure than you need for parking and then have this, whatever happens. I'd want to know in advance before I plunk down that much cash.
And that's why we moved forward with this application
Yes.
before we have everything solidified with the building.
Yeah. Yeah, because those in my mind, those buildings are very different looking. Because as, like, you'll need heating, you know, if you're meeting over winter, where I wouldn't necessarily heat a detached garage if it's just my cars, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of building code your builder will inform you on too.
Yeah, and I
with
think
regards to occupancy and restrooms and.
Right, yeah, the questions
level
regarding the
finish and
building
stuff.
and setbacks and all, I think it goes without saying that that's all things that go through city staff inspection, Metro West, those are all things that are gonna be solid before anything were to go up, so.
So where, I'm actually on the opposite side of the fence here of, we don't have a fully fleshed out building plan for a home use building of this kind, and so I'm actually not in favor of this right now because we don't know what the driveway is gonna look like, we don't know if how many bathrooms it's gonna need, or if it's gonna hook up to septic, what fire code is. We just don't have the details that support that you can financially or physically do this, and that it's tied to the use, along with, I get the fact that you're coming here and trying to get us, before you move forward with it, trying to get approval. I get that fact because I wouldn't want to waste a ton of time. I'm not ready to approve it yet because the details aren't there, and that's where I'm at on this.
But a site plan would probably.
A site plan,
help.
maybe a concept sketch of, we're gonna do one bathroom, we've looked at the septic size, we've looked at.
And I think because the building is required for this home use,
Yes.
home extended business to occur, had the garage still been functional, not been converted into living space, and you could park there, we probably wouldn't have this discussion, but that did happen, and this building is needed in order to really use the IUP, correct? Is that kind of how you feel?
That's the way I'm thinking about it. I mean, I get where you're coming from too. I mean, if I were looking at a property and if I ran a home business, or intended to run a home business, I'd want approval of the city before I did it, right? But and there's a concept here, but there's no sketches showing where it's going to be located.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, well, just let me finish and then and it, some of the concerns of the neighbors, are we going to have to look at this? What's it going to look like? I mean, those are valid concerns that are going to impact their lives too, and so I think it would just help solidify concerns that people have.
Sure, yeah, no. I think, as far as the plans, I think we have city building codes, we have city guidelines, ordinances for a reason. So whatever we build is going to fall within the guidelines of what the city has in place. We're not going to build anything outside of what is approved through city council, through the city staff, through Metro West. So for me, I think it goes without saying that, hey, what we're looking at right now is, are you guys going to allow us to gather with our friends and family to educate our kids at our property? The building is going to fall within the guidelines of city code. because that's why we have that city code there. This building is, I don't know if you've been in the area, but there are some pretty hideous buildings in the area. This is going to enhance the look of the area by far. There's a building just around the corner that the whole roof and everything fell through, and it's been sitting there, a half of a building, for the last 2 years as far as I'm concerned. There are other pretty big accessory buildings that the neighbors also have. So it's not going to be completely out of place. It falls within what the character of the area looks like.
And I have no concern with an accessory building of this size being proposed on this size lot. I mean, that's one of the joys of Dayton in these larger lot areas. What I'm concerned with is the building going to be sufficient once you add in the bathroom, add in the classroom area, add in the garage stalls? Is it going to fit the operation of what you're intending to do? And that's why I'm not.
Yeah.
Without all those details, I'm not in favor of this right now, and that's kind of just where I'm at. It's similar to, we've had a lot of home occupation come in over the last couple of years, and a lot of them, they have a SketchUp of their, here's where we're going to store our trailers or our equipment in their landscape business, right? This one, to me, one of the fellow commissioners said it just doesn't feel fully fleshed out yet. And so that's where I'm having a hard time with this.
Can I ask a clarifying question for staff?
Yeah.
So you said that if they did this out of their home instead of the accessory structure, we wouldn't be here with this
No,
part of it.
Correct. Because this permit is for a home business or home extended business, meaning it's extended outside of the home into.
But if they had the 20 students and the 2 teachers and all of this took place inside their home, then that would just be that.
That would be that. I mean, there's still the concern of, does the bathroom function, for 20 students as it would for a 4-bedroom house, but.
I just think that's something
Yeah.
to keep, the only issue is that it happens to be in a building that's not physically attached. If they added on a garage to their house and did it there, we also wouldn't be having this conversation. It's literally the fact that it's a detached garage.
It is, and I would say so that the other permit, so assuming it's in the house, it's limited to 30% of the home area. So,
Okay. The house would have to be bigger, potentially, or
right,
whatever.
so
Okay.
just say living room, dining room, kitchen, as opposed to the whole house.
I just think it's important to keep that in mind, though.
Right, and that's why I think it's more important for us to focus on the actual business itself, or if we even calling it a business. I know there was questions on we're not making money, we're paying money in, if anything, for this, because it's something our kids love and the other kids love. But that's why, to me, this makes a lot more sense to focus on what you're requiring us to do is to have a home extended business application, from my understanding, because we are doing this activity on our property. If you're telling me if I just build an addition onto my existing home and we use that space for it and I don't have to go through this process, then what does that do for the neighbors that have concerns? So, I think that we have to really take a step back and look at what we're doing. And the building itself can't be the focus. And if we are focused on the building, we have to trust that our codes and our guidelines are there for a reason. It's the activity that we're here for. Otherwise, I can flush this whole thing out and we'll build an addition onto the house and we'll do it that way. This is not a fun process. It's extremely uncomfortable. It's emotional. It's not fun.
And I totally get that and respect that you're here tonight. And unfortunately, our home extended business IUP is tied to an accessory structure. So hand in hand, it is tied to the building. I mean, Nick, that was the first point you brought up.
Well, I was just clarifying kind of
but-
where your thought process was necessarily on that. I think my thoughts, this is an interim use permit.
Yep.
That's what we're considering, a use permit, right? I get that there's a separate building tied to that simply because it's, maybe because of the garage being remodeled and it does not meet the 2-car requirement, so there's a separate building being built, and then at that point they're saying, hey, we can utilize this building, make it larger, and run this out of that building too. So I was just trying to get my facts kind of in order. My head is a little bit more, it's an interim use permit. For me, in my analysis of the situation, I'm trying to focus myself on the use aspect of it.
Yeah, I'm in line with Nick. I mean, if this building was built, John, as a 2,000 square foot garage utility building, it wouldn't be here either, right? Because it qualifies for our accessory structure guidelines.
It was. So again, it depends on how the building is used. So
Yeah,
there's,
if it's just a garage.
if it's just, there's different building codes if it's a garage
Yeah.
versus if it's occupied. So it's
Yeah.
better to be upfront about what is the building going
Well,
to
for
be
sure.
used
I'm just trying to
rather than
get, like,
retrofitting the building.
If the size of the building fits the accessory
Yeah.
structure
Yes.
requirements, and then yes, the use changes whether it's just a garage and or occupied, and that's
The use is
the,
the focus.
the building code that then kicks in. And
Yeah,
the
so
building code's
it's-
there regardless, but
Right, so to try to kind of rephrase this a little bit, so with an interim use permit, the way it's written in code is, the intent is it's a permitted use with different conditions, and the purpose of the conditions are to try to alleviate any nuisance that might be created. And so the way I would suggest the commission thinking about this is what potential nuisances might be associated with the use and what conditions would alleviate those concerns. If it's parking, code does not allow on-street parking that's associated with the home extended business. That has to be on-site. The driveway and the parking area has to be a hard surface, whether it's concrete or asphalt or pavers, that's up to the applicant.
And to be clear, those are current codes and
Those are
requirements
current
right now.
codes, so there's
right?
nothing
And-
specific about this. Yeah.
And the concerns we've heard from the public, they're valid. They're valid concerns, right? Traffic, parking, noise, all of those things. But, from my perspective, there are rules and ordinances in place for those items. And I think, we've heard some testimony of, these rules haven't been followed, so then they won't be followed in the future. From my perspective, I think the applicant deserves a chance to show that they can follow those rules, and we can't assume that they will not follow those rules. At least from my perspective, I can't make that leap that those rules won't be followed, but I can make the leap that the city would enforce, or the state, or whatever agency those rules are a part of, would enforce the rules that are in place. And if necessary, the IUP would get pulled if those, if the conditions for the IUP weren't met, or city codes weren't met, or regulations, or any other law per se of a different agency. I've got to believe that those would be enforced.
Can I ask a question on, it might be the applicant, might be the city, but we heard that this was a rental last couple of years. Was there a rental license obtained? And
So, the answer is no, there was not a rental license obtained. We applied for a rental license, and it was denied by the city staff due to the garage situation, which is, at that point, the first time we heard about the required two-car garage requirement, which this was in October of 2020, no, November maybe of 2023, was the first time we heard about that. And we applied for the permit and talked through the plans and got everything approved back in 2020 for the garage conversion. So I also want to make note that this property is a second property that we own in Dayton that we did the garage conversion with. So it was not a first incident where we worked with the city staff and worked with Metro West and got plans approved to convert the garage into additional living space. We did it in a prior property in Dayton, and a couple years later we did it at this Norwood property. So again, there's, and I think, like Dennis said, is there's a lot behind this, and we were, ready to bring it forth to City Council, but we decided to have a private meeting instead. As part of the agreement, we agreed to capitulate and add the 2-car cover space at this Norwood property. But we can't control what narrative is out there. I know it doesn't look good for us because of obviously what is being spread around, but I can assure you that we have no intentions on breaking any city codes or guidelines, trying to do anything sneaky. We've always been very upfront. I mean, like I said, our family is an open book. I'm pretty sure the reason we're here today is because someone saw on social media that we're doing this homeschool co-op on our land and reported it to city staff. And our response was, wow, we didn't know that was a requirement. So our mistake. We'll move forward and we'll apply for the application. So there's definitely nothing that I don't think we'd be dumb enough to share it all over the world if we were trying to hide anything or knew that we were doing something wrong with that regard. So
Can you clear, so you requested a rental license, it was denied, but it was rented out anyway? Can you clarify that part for me?
Yes, so we when we lived at Norwood initially, when we finished the living space in the garage, we did have a family member living in that space with us. When we moved out to go to the to where we're currently at now in Lawndale, we had family friends that moved into the home. Okay. We did not obtain a rentals license at that point because city code says that if it's family, you don't need a rental license. Our mistake is in the transition at that point when the family moved out, and then we moved friends from our church in. We should have obtained a rental license. I delayed it, and that is my mistake on that situation. But when I did move forward to apply for the rental license is when we found out about the
Garages.
2-car covered garage space, which was a huge surprise to us. We hired an attorney. We went back and forth for quite some time regarding that situation, and that's where we're at today.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
I guess I had one more question for the applicant. You said 20 students is what you're planning for.
Yeah, we had 18 students this past year. The number 25 would be our absolute max. We don't know exactly where we're going to land. Especially one of the reasons why we're really trying to push this forward is families are making decisions about homeschool co-ops that they're going to join, what they're going to do. And obviously we're getting kind of late in the game, close to things, and we're just trying to get some answers so we can give those families some answers as well. So,
recalling my days when I was looking at in-home daycares in the state of Minnesota, I recall the requirement being that kids of the in-home don't count for the number that they're allowed to have. Would you be opposed to, let's just say, a number of 15 or a number that's smaller than 20 but doesn't include either your own kids or the teacher's kids, depending on how that's written? And 15's, I'm arbitrarily throwing that out. Obviously, there's probably some thought you guys need to put into that, but the thought behind that being it falls more in line with what an in-home daycare license in the state of Minnesota is. And if this were an in-home daycare, you have 6 kids of your own, you can have 12, that's 18 kids. At an in-home daycare of, obviously in-home daycare, you got to have a certain number of kids to teacher ratio, but it falls more in line with that as far as the number of students at this facility.
But an in-home daycare doesn't have to come through or get approved, does it?
No.
No.
I get that. I'm trying to quantify the number so that we don't have 20 kids now, but when his kids grow out of school and still running this, it's not 20 new kids. There's 5, what I'm getting at is there's 5 kids that are already coming here that would live here, plus there's probably 4 kids, give or take, for a teacher or 2. And so that's.
Well, the one teacher has 4, the other teacher has 5.
So
That's most of them right
So
there.
that's 15 of your kids right there is tied to the teacher. So if we were to say, you know, besides staff and the homesteaded property, no more than 10 kids, and I know that's harder to regulate, but it gives an assurance that when those kids graduate, you're not bringing in new kids and more families.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're 100% doing this because this is what fits for our family, and we've invited others along the way with us. We do not see this as a business. It's technically a nonprofit as a way to keep things clean with the money being transferred to that's the only reason why we did it that way. But this is not something that, our oldest, she's in high school, she's not a part of this. So this is not something that we plan to continue to do once our kids graduate and go through it.
And that's kind of what I was getting at, is this is not a long-term home use.
Right.
It has a 5-year expiration.
But
this one.
outside of the permit, which has your intention to run this business is not a long-term, it's a, and that's why I was maybe trying to tie it a little bit to that as well as.
You're right. Our plan is, and really, you know, to be honest with you, it's a year-by-year thing. I mean, we've homeschooled for 4 years. Then we've gone to a private school for 4 years with our kids. Then we've gone back to homeschooling. Then we've gone back to a private school. So people may have very different opinions on how we make decisions, but it really is a year-by-year thing that we decide with our kids. Next year, this might not even exist. In a month from now, this might not exist. We might have all the families say, hey, we want to go a different direction. This just really isn't different. Hey, the ranch, this new place is very different than the ranch. So it really is. I can't sit here and say that we would even need it for 5 more years. We might just need it for 1 more year, and so that's kind of where we're at with it.
And with that, I mean, I would also, if we were to approve this, I would like to see a condition tied to the homeowners' kids being part of that.
Yeah.
So that if your kids decide to go elsewhere, other families aren't able to, you aren't able to rent it out to other families, more or less.
Yeah.
Whether money's being exchanged or not.
Sure, yeah. I've worked in education for 17 years, and I do not want to run a school out of my home. So that's not at all my passion to do that. So, this is 100%. We all homeschool together, and we want to commune together. And our kids are great friends. We have great relationships with these families, and it's about spending time, and it's about a great, unique learning experience an opportunity that they have. And it was really beautiful. It was very cool. As someone who's worked in public school, worked in private schools as an administrator, what we had here doesn't really exist. It's not. People want a safe place for their kids to go to school and to learn and to have relationships, and we were able to provide that for them from our home. And I know we're talking about accessory buildings, but at the end of the day, it's our home, and that's the feel and what we really want out of it. And if there was any concerns about a disturbance, I wouldn't even be here today. These kids are all great kids. There's absolutely no disturbance to anyone in the area, and it's because we're spread out, right? We're not talking about .3 acre lots. We're talking about 2+ acre lots.
Any other?
I mean, I'm struggling in that if this were just, hey, we're building an accessory building and we want to have this business, and then absolutely you're going to need screening, you're going to need parking, we got to think about that. Like I would be like, I need better plans than this. I'm not approving any business that is this kind of loosey-goosey, right? On the flip side, if you just built an addition on your home and did this there, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. And so I struggle then being like, well, because it's in the separate building, we're going to put all these restrictions on you. But if you just built an addition onto your home, we wouldn't have, like, no one would have any say in anything. And so I'm kind of struggling. Like, to me, that's a huge disconnect. And I'm kind of struggling with that, I'm going to be honest. Particularly since, as you said, like, as soon as our kids are done, we're done. Like, this isn't a business. And so I'm personally kind of struggling because I feel like if this were a business, there's no way I would approve it without more details. But if you just add an attachment to your house, we wouldn't be here. And so how can I, like, so I'm struggling with that disconnect.
Yep. And that's where I was with not having a plan in front of me.
I mean, with an even number of people up here, I think we might be headed for potentially a split vote. But I'll share my perspective so commissioners kind of know where I stand. I'm generally in agreement with the findings, or completely in agreement with the findings that are listed in the packet that staff had put together. After listening to the public and their concerns, like I said, I do think they're valid, but I also think that there are nuisance ordinances and there are ordinances in place that give the city a mechanism to address them if they occur. So from that standpoint, I mean, I'm in favor of this as proposed.
Excuse me, can I say something?
Hold on a second. Just hold on a second. Let us chat, and then we'll excuse the applicant, and then I'll allow you to come back up in a second.
Fine, let's go. You lied to them for a whole year, now they're gonna let him do it?
Yep.
Sure.
How many properties do you own
But
in the city?
I would clarify, we are not a voting body.
Order.
Christian people
Order.
do stuff like this.
Hey,
They don't.
Order.
stop that.
No,
Don't
you're
do
not
that.
Christian.
Don't do that.
For those left, I would say that we are not a voting body up here. We make recommendations to city council, and that's what we do.
Yes.
Right? We are not a voting body. We are not letting this happen. So just clarify what was said out there. We're not letting it yet. That's not what our role is.
And I would agree with that. I would like to make it clear, after I excuse the applicant, I may, if there is a strong desire, I may open it back up for a short public hearing if it is not repeated information that we have heard. So.
And it stays civil.
And it stays civil, yes. So.
I'm looking at the packet as well and the findings from the city staff. And, I mean, the application falls within allowable use. I agree with the applicant that city building codes determine the use of the building and how the building is built and setbacks and all that stuff, and that process will go through its due process. So at this point, I'm in favor of allowing this, or providing my approval for it.
I do want to acknowledge that there were rules that weren't followed. And so I can understand from a neighbor's perspective, not understanding the background.
When you say
The
there were
rental
rules
part.
that were not followed.
The rental part, right?
Okay.
And so if I know that, right, I can understand a concern that future rules might not be followed. I get that. I'm just saying I understand the concern. I agree, though, that, like, there's a lot more to it, right? There's a lot of background that not everyone knows. And so I'm also feel like second, I don't even know if it's a second chance, it'd be a first chance in my mind, right? Like, we didn't know that the rules weren't being followed, right? Like, didn't realize, like, the whole rental thing, you thought you were fine, you thought you had,
Well,
like.
city
yeah.
guidelines do say if it's a relative living in the property, you do not need a rental license.
Yeah.
That's, you're exempt.
Yeah,
So
so,
there was a lapse between
one,
relative
yes.
versus non-relative.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so, but like, if you're the neighbor and you're not close and you don't know these things, like, as a neighbor, I don't necessarily know that this person is related to you, right? Like, I don't know that. So, like, I can see might be some perception. But again, I keep coming back to, if you just did it in your house, we can't, like, like, you're allowed to do this on your property. And so.
Which I think sorry.
Yeah. But I want to acknowledge those concerns. Again, I have had a neighbor who was not following the rules. And also, there was an issue in that the city staff told them one thing, turned out it wasn't fine, and there was kind of a back and forth and whatever. So, like, I just want to recognize, like, you want to have good, positive neighborly relations. You want to like your neighbors. You don't want to not like your neighbors, and you don't want your neighbors to not like you. And so, the assumption, like, there are rules. We're going to just assume you're going to follow them, right? And, like, you're going to follow the rules, and if you don't, then your neighbors have recourse. But as long as you're following the rules, like, everything is fine.
Right.
And I don't think there's necessarily, like, get a chance to follow the rules, right? Like, why?
And,
So
yeah, it's really unfortunate that is the narrative. I don't even know those neighbors. I mean, I think the ones that know us can vouch that we're kind, good people. Like, it really is sad. And like I said, we've loved this city since 2011. And it's been a crazy year for our family. And maybe it's the social media thing that's the unfortunate piece, is that people create, their opinions on you based on what they see and not who they interact with. And that's unfortunate for us. But what you're seeing here today, just now, is what we've experienced in our area and the reason why we left. And so for us, we're processing this right now because this is a shock to us. We don't know these people, and they have this narrative from someone. I don't know. So
There is a school less than a quarter mile away that's got hundreds and hundreds of screaming kids, and I live within earshot of it as well. And I mean, we're talking about adding 20 kids to the neighborhood.
So I'm going to just give my final couple cents on this. And I don't disagree with what you're trying to do at all. I am going to not vote for this. I'm going to be flat out and say that for 3 reasons. One is it's being applied for as a home extended business without a fully fleshed out site plan. We've done that, or even a concept plan in front of us. We've done that with several others, just as a precedent. We've looked at screening and other operations within that. This use is very minimal, I will agree with. It's very minimal in impact, less impact to others, with probably only 6 cars coming in and out. That's less than when I have my hockey team at my house, my daughter's hockey team. I agree with that. But from the application standpoint, if we had a plan showing the driveway with a turnaround, my opinions on that would be a little different. If we had plans of showing that, I would be able to consider that, right? Second is, you are currently not homesteaded at this property. Again, I don't think it's fair to people like yourself trying to move into a property. You own it, correct, but trying to move into a property and open a business, I don't know that it's fair to them to try to move and start their business. But I also, you are homesteaded somewhere else currently, and I'm struggling with that one as wanting to promote a business, but right now the business isn't wanted in the neighborhood. And I'm using the term business because that's what the application is, right? I'm going by the legal terms here. And so I'm struggling with that one because you don't want to make your decisions without our approval. But yet you don't live there yet. We don't have the fleshed out plan of what your building is gonna, I'm not talking, I don't need to know the siding, the details. I need to know the size, how many bathrooms, the driveway turnaround, that kind of stuff, just a concept site plan. And then the third within this is, at least the way it's written, is it has the findings of the IUP to the home daycare. I'm going back to my statement. I think we need, if we're going to approve or recommend approval on this, I think it needs to be written in such a way that limits the number of students that is relative to your family and the people that you are paid to be there, which is why it's classified as a business. That's a technicality, and if staff wants to work out that number after this, and you can convince me on the other two, on the commissioner's side here, I would be in favor of that. Just because of I just don't want it to grow at what it is. So that's a technicality in here. But those are kind of where I'm at with this. And I get the building is going to go through the codes and go through all that stuff.
And staff site review.
And staff site review, but when we look at, we had the rental, the storage unit come in a couple months ago. We were able to, you need to burn this up, you need to put trees here, you need to block screening from your neighbors because of the use in the, he had some mechanisms to do that. And that's where I'm struggling with this one and not ready to approve it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think generally speaking, from my perspective on the role of planning commission is not necessarily to be site designers and to trust the staff to do those things, but I totally get where you're coming from.
Yep.
And I think that's valid. My question for staff would be, what happens if we're tied? Can it still go to city council?
Yes, I mean, it would go to,
It's just a recommendation. I mean, it could still go to city
the
council.
only reason it would not go to city council is if you table it.
Sure,
So if it's a 2-2 vote, then there's no recommendation.
right. It's just a neutral recommendation and it goes to city council and that's where the decisions are made and an opportunity to maybe address some of what you've heard from us by the time you present to city council.
So my only concern would be, Nathan, if, let's say the IUP didn't pass the recommendation, they gave you a negative recommendation, would you still put up the same size accessory building? I wouldn't think so. And so you don't need to answer that, but that's a question, because I don't remember what our agreement was when the discussion we had, but was there a planning application or a building application supposed to be submitted by September?
No, we didn't put a deadline. We actually gave a year time frame for us to get the two-car covered garage space. Yep, is what we talked about.
That there was some plan in place.
July 2025.
That's to complete it, right?
Right, to complete it, yep.
Wasn't there supposed to be some, my concern is that there's not enough time here. Because if you guys push this, I don't know that, at that point, we have no planning commission input for our decision. And my only concern is that if he needs that before figuring out what to build, that's a problem. Now, I guess if you tabled it and you given our agreement, you could push the building permit out until that was satisfied. That's my concern, is that by the time you need to submit something, you don't have an answer from the city yet. So.
And Dennis, I do appreciate, you saying, getting a recommendation from us is important to city council. And I don't want to diminish our role up here and recognize the fact that the public hearing occurs here, right? And the public hearing occurs here, and that's important as well. So I'm not trying to push for a push vote, right? I'd much rather us have a decision one way or another or a recommendation one way or another as a body up here to help give council what our clear
And you
direction
guys
may
tend
be.
to flesh things out better than, I mean, that's what you guys
With
do.
more time.
Yep,
Yeah.
we get more,
So-
yeah, with the
and
public hearing
more time.
process and whatnot as well, I
You
think
do spend
that,
more time on things, but that's because you're fleshing them out, and we need that.
Well, and it also then gives the applicant a chance to, you've heard what we're confused about, and then you can have those things kind of fleshed out for city council. So there's not the open-ended, well, what, so I think that's the other big thing between planning to city, is it gives the applicant a chance to figure some other details out that they don't always have.
I think it still goes back to the question at hand, is the proposal is, can he operate a extended home business to house 20 students on his property? And we hear a lot of information. We greatly appreciate the feedback from the city and the neighbors, because a lot of times we don't have anybody come and talk. And so it is nice to hear that and just to get that. But we also have to just look at the facts of what the city allows, what the ordinances allow, what the findings from the staff provide us. And the question is extended home business allowed on this property? Regardless of how it's configured or built or whatever, because there is a separate process for that. And yes, it would be great to have a site plan. I would love to have a site plan. I'm an architect. I want to see it. I want to know what this looks like. I want to get into all that. But the building code and how many bathrooms and all that isn't our jurisdiction.
It's,
Right? I mean, it's about how the land is being used, what the aesthetic of the building looks like, and then just enforcement of the ordinances, not the building code. So, I mean, sometimes we get way more information because people are farther along in projects, and we see those concept plans, and we see the floor plans and all that stuff, and it's great information, and it helps aid our decision process. In this instance, I feel like the applicant's coming because they need to build a building, and they need to know, can they build it? Do they have to build it for 2 cars to meet the ordinance of the city, or can they build it bigger so they can house this co-op inside of it and have an extended home business? And at that point, they figure out what that building's going to look like.
So long-term question, so if the co-op goes through, you've built a large accessory structure for 2 cars, but then your kids, graduate out, hopefully they move out, right? Like, that's the goal. What do you do with that space then? Like, what is your intent for that space? Do you have any long-term goals for that additional space?
Well, yeah, we're a family of 8, so, I mean, we would.
Someone might not move out?
Well, no, we would use that space. I mean, we don't currently have a 2-car garage on the property. We have stuff, so, we would use it for storage, we would use it to hang out in, whatever people use those kind of buildings for. And that's our intent for it now as well. The co-op, like I said, is only 85 days of the year, 12 hours a week. So we're not
Most of the time.
Yeah. So most of the time, it's a use for our family. That's what we're using it for.
If I could just kind of rephrase this a little bit in the way of thinking. With any conditional interim use permit, there are 9 findings of fact that the commission and the council have to find that or exist. And I don't want to read these because it's going to take me some time. So it's written in the resolution. So I guess my question for the commission is there enough information available that you can say to these findings, yes, that is true, or yes, that is accurate?
I guess the 2 that I'm going to point out, that without a concept site plan, and I'm not talking a full on-site plan, but just a concept, that's a wide open lot where that building at least was described to me as kind of more where that RV is.
No.
Okay. It's, somewhere in that area right there on the north side of the property. And there's not a whole lot of screening on that side, so finding number 6 is the proposed use adequately screened. And staff said no screening is necessary. I'm gonna argue with that this is not screened today. There's no building there today. And there are homeowners who came today who had concerns of looking at this and the use. And so a concept plan would help justify that, getting to our point here. Number 6 is the proposed use will not create a nuisance, including but not limited to odor, noise, vibrations, visual pollutions. That's number 7. And where I'm going with this one is the parking. If we show where the driveway, how the driveway is going to be extended across your lot, show adequate parking for the use of the building and the use of the home business, easy concept plan, easy sketch on a napkin would at least get me in the realm here. Right now, a lot of this is verbal, but when we've done these home use buildings in the past, or home extended buildings use in the past, we've gone through those. And I'm going off of precedence here of why I don't believe either one of those is actually found here with the concept that they're presenting.
Let me play a little devil's advocate on that one. Do we require screening on accessory structures? If this were just a garage accessory structure, no business,
it's
no,
Sure, so,
co-op.
no, so the idea of the screening is you're trying to alleviate what the nuisance is. And so in
Right.
this case, it's not the building that's the nuisance, it's the activity. So if you have parking and headlights and whatever
Yep.
else, that creates the nuisance where you would want screening.
And I get that, and where I'm going with that is the use that is proposed has been described to us as 85 days a year, 12 hours, right? The parking is covered under decision in your packet there that 2 surface parking stalls will be required. So that does cover the 2 teachers that we were that was described to us as being on this site all the time. After that, it's just drop off from parents, right? It's no different than the in-home daycare that I brought my kids to. We had a line of parents down the street at 4:30 because that's when she closed, right? I mean, there was a line of, there was headlights, there was, when we got into the winter months, when it got dark out, there were headlights, there was all of that stuff. So I guess devil's advocate from my perspective, I can say yes, I think, to those findings of fact that screening's not necessary. To your point, there's a school nearby, right? The kids make noise. I don't know that it violates any ordinances, at a decibel level or outside of certain times that noise is allowed. It's got 6 kids. 6 kids are going to make a lot of noise just themselves, right?
If I could
add about make a lot of noise.
I could add about noise in the neighborhood, all of these properties, a lot of these properties back up to the park right here, and there's from the property which we're on the other side of the street, I can hear loud and clear everything that's happening at this playground when there's games going on or whatever. So as far as noise,
right, and that's where I'm kind of going with it, right? The noise is almost noise that will be expected in a neighborhood, right? Yep. Kids, you would expect that it's not a dump truck, it's not an excavator, it's not a bulldozer, right? It's not, or a different type of home use being an auto, repair shop. You're not hearing pneumatic air tools or a kennel. You're not hearing pneumatic air tools. You're not hearing, that type of thing. It, quite frankly, is noise that you would expect in a neighborhood. It's kids. It's more of them, but sure.
I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna ask you, I guess, should we open the public hearing again?
If you do, it's for one-minute comments.
I think.
And it has
new
to be new
content.
stuff, it cannot be a repeat.
No, if you do, we've got 5 comments online.
Okay. I think,
Should
I think we're split.
Yep.
I'm
personally split, so
Let me ask you this, have we discussed amongst the 4 of us everything we think we need to bounce off each other? And Peter, I'm not arguing with you, right?
No,
I'm trying to maybe provide what my perspective would be on those particular items, and your vote lies where your vote lies,
Yep.
and that's fine. But have we discussed amongst us 4 everything we think we need to discuss? And have we asked of staff and the applicant what we, at this point, need to ask?
I think.
I do.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with where I'm at.
Yeah, I think, me personally, I think, open it up, let's hear what they have to say, bring it back to us for a decision.
I think, well, let's do that. It might help inform you too on what our decision is, what 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 our recommendation to the council is going to be, and then what council's decision is going to be. It might help inform you on how to operate, how to do things. So take note of just some of the concerns that may or may not come up.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would ask everyone to consider is the personal attacks, the accusations based on, again, I'm not sure where people are getting this information. As far as I know, this was stuff that was between our lawyer and the city's attorney, and the stuff that I've heard tonight is, it's outside of, I'm not sure where they're getting their information. So I would just ask for that to be into consideration, because, that's more so what I'm hearing than anything else.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks for your time so far.
All right, with that, at 8:30, I'm going to open the public hearing. I'm going to try to limit it to new comments only, and limit it to, we have 3 minutes in our rules. We'll stick to that. So come on forward.
Should I state my name and address again?
Yes, please.
Paul Betancourt, 13560 Norwood Lane North. Would it be okay to address some of the comments that you made concerns about it?
Yeah.
Just very briefly.
Yeah, I would say we're not necessarily going to go back and
We're
forth
not
on
gonna-
those,
I
but
don't want
yes,
to go
feel
back
free.
and forth. I just
Yep.
want to. So what you were saying is the school is in fact behind our property. We have the way. There's also a screening of 30-foot pine trees that go across there. So I think that's kind of where you're talking about the use as being the case. The kids, 20, again, we hear the kids not a problem, but the more concern is 20 cars. You said again, the daycare, 12 cars, a line already forms. Now we're talking 20 cars, a line could form. That could be more of an issue, and that would, I think, fall in the area of my concern about the nuisance. Paul, you're talking, and Dennis, you were talking about the concern that this has to be decided with the building plan because of the parking structure has to be built. That is not, that's something that was caused by the applicant. So it's not something that like he's being forced for no reason to do it. There was a conversion that was made, whether it was known that it wasn't allowed or not. It was made by the applicant, and now the correction has to do that. So I don't think that's a reason to speed up the process of the decision regarding this use in general. And that I agree that it should be disentangled, but because of the way that it's applied, it's entangled with that. And so I just wanted to, point out those points. And so from the point, I do think it is the job to like figure out nuisances as designed. The school has that school is hundreds of kids, I get that. But also just the cars is more the concern. And so screening and sort of more detail about that would make us a lot more comfortable. Also, there's no animosity. It's not personal. Nathan waves to me and says hi. That's very friendly. I think a little bit of the problem is also the neighbors feel a little blindsided because there are relationships, but from what I heard, this notice came with the design and that, and no one knew anything about it. So when you're talking about community, forming a sense of community, I think there was a little sense that, there's a disconnect between what was known and what was unknown. And again, you were talking about the recourse when something has been violated. That's true, but clearly the building permit, that was violated. It hasn't been corrected. It's been 9 months. I know there's an agreement, but we're not privy to that because it's private, as I agree. But also the thing with the street, like Nathan said, we can always call him to talk about problems, but the street parking was very obvious to everyone that the tenants were parking off the street in a rental that wasn't approved, and nothing happened. And so I think people are frustrated that it feels there's a sense of the recourses to make sure that those problems are taken care of haven't worked, and so they really want more detail up front about this to make sure that it doesn't keep happening.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for my time.
Thank you.
Come on up.
Is there a timer, Peter?
Hi, my name is Jess Gifford. I live on 13521 Norwood Lane, so I am the long, skinny one to the south of them. I guess I originally did not want to get involved about any of this because we had in our previous situation, we had a really big negative experience with our neighbors and HOAs and city councils. So we originally just came, my husband's out of town, of course. I wanted to come just for informational only. And I just wanted to say that I just wanted to back Nathan and Megan as humans. For me, that breaks my heart to see that people treat them that way. When we first moved in, I remember meeting Nathan. He was painting his house, and we were so excited to meet our first neighbors. They welcomed us warmly, and we were so excited to live by them until they later moved. I just wanted to say, first and foremost, their kids have always been respectful of our yard. We have a dog that does not like strangers. Their kids never crossed into our yard. If they did, they got their ball and they came straight back. They were very respectful, no issues at all. I also wanted to say, when we first got the notice, we were blindsided. Unfortunately, my husband's out of town. I wouldn't say we were excited about it. However, we knew, knowing the Yancys personally, we decided to step back. We wanted to hear the information at this meeting before we made a decision on it. Because we know that whatever the Yancys did, they did it because they cared about us and they had good intentions. My husband, being from homeschooling, was like, wow, that'd be really fun to have that at someone's house versus a neutral site such as a church, which he went to. So yeah, I just really wanted to talk about them as humans and that they're great. I would trust them giving them my garage door code if needed to. Like, they're great humans, and I'm really sorry that you had to see them be treated the way they are. So that's all I really wanted to say.
Thank you.
Mine's real quick, I promise. Paula Irvin, 12465 137th Avenue. In regards to the noise, you're stating that you can hear the school and everything. We were all well aware that the school was there. We're all well aware that recess happens. The business, you know, you're telling us it's happening and stuff. That's the reason. I don't know if I'm making myself, you know, clear or anything, but the extra noise, the extra traffic, you know, this is going to be new introduction into the neighborhood. And it's just, like I said, 35 years at the same address. And it's just not something that, you know, you're not ready for that change and everything. So that's it.
Thank you.
So Jamie Wisniewski, 13600 Norwood Lane, right across from the camper is where our house is. I want to address, Nick, what you had asked about the ordinances and that they have to take care of that, that the city is responsible for that. The city has been working on the garage, has been working with the vehicles and everything from the past renters that were in there. So they've done, I've got my information, Nathan, I'd like to say to you, I got my information from the city. So it was nothing that was out on social media. I'm not even on social media. And it sounds like now it was at the cost of the city to see how far we were going to have to take this, and it didn't get done. So my concerns really come in with what has happened in the past, and it didn't get resolved, and the city has been working and trying to take care of this, and the ordinance didn't go through. Nathan and Megan, you're great neighbors. I loved it when you were there. This is nothing personal at all. This is just the fact that we don't want a business across the street, and we want to make sure that the rules are all followed if it goes through. So I just want to talk about the ordinance. Yes, it is the city, but it takes forever, and it comes at a cost of the taxpayer if you have to elevate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You said they were on the comments?
There are, yeah. So and I'm just going to allow anyone to talk here. Let's see if all that works. So, and I'm just going to go down the line here. You know, Angie, do you have anything? Oh, I'm going to defer to Chris. You're going to have to show me how to do this. escape.
Where do you have
This
this?
this one's not.
Yeah, I don't know why they're not coming through.
I guess, John, under the Q&A, there's,
Yeah, it's,
Yeah, they might have to do a Q&A thing.
yeah, you got it.
Well, and you can ask the attendees to raise their hand digitally if they wanted to, because then it would put a hand right next to their name.
Sure. So yeah, I'm just going to go off the Q&A. So this is from Anonymous. We would like to urge the commission to
that
not.
that one was previously read.
Okay. I'm just going to go down to something that might be.
There's,
These are also anonymous.
they're all anonymous.
Could they attach it, hypothetically, could they attach a name to it, or do they have to intentionally put anonymous?
The way this is written, it could be anonymous. So just your voice isn't going to get picked up by the microphone. So the question was, could this be anonymous, or should it be attached to a person? Be up to the chair. I guess generally speaking, when the public is here speaking, you're stating your name and your address.
I think based on my judgment, and other commissioners can outrule me, but based on my judgment, I didn't see any new information that was valid in those comments. The
I
rest
read
was
them all.
speculation that doesn't go into my
Agreed.
sway in my opinion. I think with that, do we have any additional? All right, at 8:41, we will close the public hearing for a second time. I would say my opinion hasn't changed. I think that the concerns of the residents and neighbors are real. They're scared. I think it's our job to help. I see where you're coming from of this business, this type of business is not that conducive to noise. I think it's the applicant's job to present that in a way that proves that. I feel like neighbors who live directly across the street and are going to be most impacted haven't felt yet that it is adequately screened, the parking is adequately taken care of, things like that. So to me, two of my concerns, the number of students, I think can easily be resolved. I think if it came in as 3 families or two families outside of the 2 teachers and the Yancy's, that's a whole different conversation here, 4 vehicles versus 20. But the way it's written and presented to us, it was 20. And so that one presumes that's 20 vehicles. So I think that one can be resolved on a technical issue that is beyond this, but because we're not going to resolve that tonight, I'm not going to be in favor of that. We don't have the screening defined. We don't have the driveway defined with turnarounds. And so there's been concerns of past neighbors of this being a rental. I had a rental across the street from me that was terrible, that did very similar things of parking on the street. They were throwing parties all hours of the night. Hopefully you guys didn't have to deal with that, but unfortunately because of past incidences of parking that neighbors have had, I'd just like to see a parking plan for the use. And that's my opinion and why I'm going to hold on that one. So.
I feel like that could be provided to the council then,
It could be,
Yeah.
but I don't have to vote in favor tonight,
So, agreed.
with giving those stipulations.
I will make a motion to approve. I've got to go all the way back up to the part of the staff report to get the language right on it, because I agree with the findings of fact that staff has laid out in the resolution, including screening. I do not believe screening is needed So I would make a motion to approve the interim use permit home extended business at 13551 Norwood Lane, according to the findings of fact presented in the packet.
Do you want to summarize the 6 decisions, though? Just the home extended business shall be limited to just the accessory building in the yard. Prior to operation, the property shall be homesteaded by the applicants. That has to happen first. Prior to operation, it will comply with all building, fire, zoning codes. So any concerns about bathrooms, those things will be addressed. The applicant shall construct a driveway accessing this, so that will be addressed. The property shall comply with residential parking requirements, including minimum of 2 enclosed parking on the surface. So parking will be addressed. And the interim use permit lasts at most 5 years. So
yes,
that is
I
what
agree.
we're like. But that is those things. So a lot of the concerns are addressed in this.
Correct. And that's in the resolution. The resolution's 3 pages. The second page being primarily the findings of fact, and then the third page being what you had listed off there. That's what I'm basing my motion on.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Do we need any discussion on anything else?
Question for you. If this was amended to have a 7th, that appropriate screening would be discussed, or is there just nothing there for you?
For me, no, because I don't necessarily know what appropriate screening really looks like for it, to be honest with you, right? It's, from my perspective, it's 2 people that will work there, 2 vehicles that will park there. They would pull into that driveway. After that, I mean, it's pick up and drop off. Right, and that could happen at a daycare, from my opinion. Pick up or drop off in the morning, pick up in the evening. How long they're there for, I don't know that really has much of an impact. So for me, I don't see it a whole lot different, that part of that use being from an in-home daycare. Yes, the number, I will acknowledge that there are more than an in-home daycare would license. But from my perspective, the traffic through this neighborhood, they're large lots. I did look at some traffic data through there and crash history, and there just isn't any. So from my perspective, I'm not concerned about the traffic. I do not feel that, from my perspective, screening is necessary, but I'm just one.
So we have a motion and a second. So
I just want to comment on the screening, and this is something that I think Paul brought up, is the large trees. If we look where that driveway is today, and if they're going to connect that driveway to where the proposed building is, that's going to take out a fair amount of those trees.
Potentially.
Mm-hmm. Not, and that's not having a concept plan, right? And that's where I'm still going to stand of.
Yep.
Because it is tied to an IUP, we are allowed to ask for some of that stuff, and so that's we've done it in the past with other ones, and I'm voting more on precedence of the not having the concept plan and being able to see that. Screening of the use, I don't necessarily know that there's much to do there, except for the driveway is part of the use, and the parking. So we call out residential parking in here. I do think that may need to be amended to also call out the turnaround and the parking for you have your residential, and then you have is the business operation side of this, the 2 teachers, is that parking called out? Just because if this were an accessory structure without the IUP, right, we would have that same stipulation, right? So do we have to just define that is the parking for the business as well, as part of the resolution?
So the code requires, like every residential house, you have a minimum 2-car garage and a driveway for 2 vehicles.
Yep.
So for the house itself.
And John, I'm just asking more on a wording side, is the parking, enclosed parking, separate, maybe constructed, it shall comply with residential parking requirements, and then basically right after that, just add in and also comply with the use of the home business. because this isn't a residential, the application isn't about a residence here, it's about a business.
That's right. It'd be up to the motioner.
So that was where I was going with that.
So you would like to see a little bit more specificity with respect to the turnaround part of it?
Yep.
And the kind of the drop-off operations to it?
So, question. My understanding was driveways that exceeded 200 feet required a turnaround. And I
think it's less than that, but yeah, so if it's, and I'm going off of memory here, so I want to say if it's like over 150 feet, you have to have a turnaround.
I believe you're correct.
At a certain distance.
So it's already in our, so as part of a plan review, it should, that should point that out.
And where I'm getting at with this, and this is back to my whole thing, if this were an accessory building as a normal garage and not for a business, we wouldn't see that.
It wouldn't be here at all.
And I'm fine with that under a normal use. We're having a homeschool with 20 kids, potentially. What if there's a bus?
But I mean, if it wasn't the home, we wouldn't be here having this conversation.
I get it, but that's not the process we're in. And so what if it's a bus that needs to use that turnaround?
We can speculate like that, though.
Yeah.
But
I get where you're going, and I would agree, had we been presented a site plan, this would be a lot easier discussion.
Yes.
We probably would be on to the next item, right?
Yeah.
But, and
I'll just say,
I wish we had a site plan too. I really do.
And
But-
Dennis, I'm giving you my comments more so because I am going to vote against it, but I'm not against the actual use. I'll say it that way. I'm giving you my comments and I'm going to vote no, but I want those comments to be clear because I'm not against the use. I'm just against what was presented to us is not fully fleshed out. And that's why I'm not comfortable with
I
it.
suspect we'll have a site plan.
So that's my recommendation is a site plan with maybe some screening, what along that driveway where the turnaround might be, just some things that would make some of the neighbors a little more comfortable. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Motion passes 3-1. Good luck. And thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you to everybody.
Thank you for everybody, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for everybody.
This will be on
August 27th.
August 27th, City Council meeting. All right, with that, we will move into IUP for Event Center at Magnus.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
So if I have concerns as a neighbor for this, do I have to go down there or do I get to say them up here?
I would say you get to say them up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But acknowledge how I'm speaking of this as, or?
Well, I mean, it's similar to comments I gave at the
That's right.
previous meetings about
Okay.
our neighbors I've talked to.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Just for clarity, if there's a perception of a conflict of interest, then you
I will
state,
rescind, yes.
well, state what that is. So,
Okay.
we're all neighbors.
Jesus.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, this is an interim use permit for an event center, 16861 North Diamond Lake Road for the Magnus Veterans Foundation. So as the commission is aware, Magnus received an IUP for a veterans outpatient facility in 2021. This was specific for the use of the property and the buildings for an outpatient clinic. What we're here for tonight is an IUP for an event center. With the event center, and just to real abbreviate this a little bit, the idea is you're having an outdoor activity where you're going to have a whole lot of people in. It's not the typical day-to-day operation. So this is a separate permit from what they currently have. The property itself, I believe, is 34 acres. It's on North Diamond Lake Road on the north shore of Diamond Lake. 34 acres. We have kind of a site plan, but I'm going to refer to the aerial photo. This was originally, I believe, an IUP for a home business. I'm not sure what I can't remember what year it was, but it was some time ago. So the day-to-day operations are in the building. This is the original house that's been converted to, I'm going to call it a commercial use. And then we have the buildings that either are used for storage or are used as part of the clinic activities. But specific to this permit for the event center, access would be gained by the western driveway, and then parking for about 500 to 600 vehicles in the north, I'm going to call it the north pasture area. The events itself would be in the backyard, kind of between the house and the pond. Again, it's 34 acres. By staff's estimate, there's space for about 500 to 600 vehicles with ample space to expand. 500 to 600 vehicles is roughly 1,000 people. So again, with any conditional and interim use permit, the idea is if it were to be approved, to have conditions that address the potential nuisance factors. If it's not to be approved, it's because it's not an appropriate place, or there's something that would prevent those resolution or resolving those nuisance factors. So with that, that's my. I was hoping to keep it to 30 seconds, but I think I'm over that. So we have applicant here, and you can stand for any questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Bob Jaskowiak. I'm the Vice President and Director, a donor, a volunteer at Magnus Veterans Foundation. I'm a 28-year Navy veteran. I volunteer my time there, as do about 200 other people. And what we do there is we operate a medical and wellness clinic for veterans and their family members. We don't charge our members any fees whatsoever, and we don't charge their insurance. Everything we do, we fundraise and we provide all the services to veterans and their families. And those services include medical services provided by a physician, a physician's assistant, and a nurse. Mental health counseling, we have 2 licensed and credentialed social workers and mental health professionals that counsel veterans and their families. And we have a lot of associated services, including physical therapy, physical fitness, chiropractic, yoga, and we also operate recovery groups, addiction groups on the property, Vietnam veterans groups, and the property itself is quite beautiful, and we allow our members to use it. So we're in our 3rd year of existence, 3 years and a month really. We're at 800 members. We get along with our neighbors and with the city. And in the past, we have had outdoor events. These have included concerts and festivals. We're moving away from that. The only purpose of those events was fundraising. It costs a lot of money to do what we do for veterans, but those type of large events haven't proven to be as effective because they're so heavy with volunteer time. So we're shifting away from those events, but we do have one event planned for September 7th, and another event is happening in August, which isn't put on by Magnus, but which is for veterans on our property. And I'll stop there in the interest of time, and I'm here for questions if you have any.
So, I live on the corner of South Diamond Lake in Zanzibar, the new house there in the new barn. And so, think you guys do amazing work. My concern is not even so much a concern about the permit. Like, I'm fine with the event center thing. It is the request occasionally to, so in the event center ordinance, we have a requirement that amplified music, amplified noise outside stops at 8 p.m. And you've requested in 2 different places to go past that to 10 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. And I have a little bit of a concern there because we also have Fisher Farms right across the street, also an event center, also has that same rule. Dean's also went through, they're an event center, they have that same rule. If you guys are like, okay, these 2 times we want to go past the 8 p.m., and then next year it's 3 times, and next year it's 4 times, and then Fisher Farms is like, you know what, we also would like to ignore the 8 p.m. rule, and then Dean's is like, you know what, we'd also like to ignore the 8 p.m. rule, then what's the point of the 8 p.m. rule for outside amplified noise? Because one of the reasons I moved out to 18 acres in the middle of nowhere is because I didn't want to hear my neighbor's music. And I can hear your music, which is fine during the day, and I get it, and you guys do amazing work. You know, my dad served in the Korean War, my uncle died in Vietnam, my brother-in-law served in the Iraq War, my nephew is actively serving, and like, you guys do amazing work, and it is needed. Trust me, my dad needed what you guys did, and he never got it. So like, I love what you guys do, and I'm 100% on board with like that part of it. My concern is the pushing the amplified music past the 8 p.m., which is the ordinance, because the reality is amplified music travels. That's the whole point. And you do have a lot of neighbors. Like, yes, it's technically zoned A, but like, people live on those properties. So that's my only concern. Everything else I'm absolutely fine with. It's just that the request to push the outside amplified music past 8 p.m. If the one way I would be okay with it is if we added some additional rule that at most it can be twice a year. Because again, you know, like if it's like, okay, you know, like I said, like I don't want this going on, because then it's you, and then it's Fisher Farms, and then it's Dean's, and now I'm suddenly living in the entertainment district, and I don't know how that happened, right? Like, how did that happen? So that's my only concern out of all of this. Everything else is fine, and like I said, love what you guys do, and I think you do great work, and in general, great neighbors. That's my only thing. So, I don't know what the...
My comment was going to say thank you for everything that you guys do for the veterans, both locally and even more regionally. Playing off your comment a little bit, that sounds completely reasonable. And would you appreciate a notice when that's going to occur, stuff like that? I think those are probably doable things. I won't speak on your behalf, but
it's more just
as a neighbor, I would,
like,
it'd be nice to know when,
Yeah.
if it were going to happen, and maybe have some assurances that it's not going to be
it's not going to grow.
a numerous amount of
Yes.
days a year.
Yeah, because maybe you guys don't do the fundraising thing, but maybe you find that a good way is to rent because if you're an event center, you're not limiting the events to you guys, right? That's the whole point of an event center, is it gets rented out to other people. So you or your organization might not do this more than once or twice a year, but you might have someone who wants to come and rent your space and donate a lot of money, and you're like, well, actually this makes more sense instead of us running an event, which I can only imagine the expenses. You guys, have put on some amazing things. I'm sure the expenses were high, but like renting it out to someone else, but then they want to go late, right? Like, so in an event center, you're opening up the opportunity to potentially rent it out to other organizations. And I would just like some assurances that 8 p.m. amplified music thing isn't just ignored willy-nilly by everyone who wants to. So.
Mm-hmm. And your objection is specifically the after 8 p.m.
Amplified after 8 p.m.
Yeah,
Listening to other people's music we lived in a townhome in Golden Valley. I loved a lot of things about it. One of my selling points to my husband, because they won't let me have the horse in a townhome in Golden Valley for obvious reasons. So that's my reason. But like one of my selling points to my husband was like, we won't have neighbors, right? Like you don't have to listen to them anymore. Like we will be, so it's like, okay, but now we still get to listen to everyone else's music. And that would be my only concern is to A, just it's not allowed, or B, twice a year max. No more than that. Because then at most I got 2 from you, 2 from Fisher, and 2 from Dean's. So that's 6 at most I might be stuck with, where I'm listening to music late at night. Because I have to get up at the crack of dawn for those chickens. I go to bed early, so. And they are 7 days a week. I don't get to take weekends off for them. So they don't stay in the barn on Sundays because I would like to sleep in.
If I might respond, we didn't ignore anything. We're here asking for a waiver.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm just saying, but because which is fine, and that's why, I'm not saying that you did ignore it. I'm just saying I have a concern if you ask for a waiver and it's approved, and if every time it's asked for and then every time it's approved, at a certain point, then what's the purpose of having an 8 p.m. cutoff if every request to ignore it is approved, right? So.
We're certainly willing to come and ask for a waiver on an event-by-event basis, which is what we have done in the past. I thought the concept here was to have one permit that covered everything. But
that goes to 8 p.m.
Because we're asking for a waiver, if you want us to come back to you on an event-by-event basis, I think that's reasonable.
Only those events that would have amplified music after 8 p.m. If you can convince those that you're working with to say you can amplify till 8 p.m. After that it goes, more quiet,
then you don't.
Many might be okay with that, and staff might not see your waiver request all that often.
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't know yet either until you start to see what type of organizations come to you or what type of events you might end up hosting. Sarah, as you mentioned, right, it could become, a very popular place to have other organizations help your efforts.
Yeah, I'm not saying any rules have been broken. It's just, like I said, if every request to go past the 8 PM is approved, then the 8 PM is a meaningless rule. That's all.
What I'm suggesting is you would be able to control.
Yeah.
On the enforceability side, I guess, I'm going to say a waiver, in zoning terms is a variance, and the variance has to be practical difficulties, and there aren't any. So if the intent is to allow a limited number of events where there's amplified music past 8 o'clock, put a number on that.
Yeah.
That's enforceable for us.
Yeah.
But
Is it, I'm asking from I get it, it's more of a staff concern. I heard a couple things when you were talking that stood out in my mind. We have Dean's nearby, we have Fisher Farms nearby, we have Magnus. We may have one or two more of these pop up in the near future. But is it, do we need to rewrite our ordinance or amend our ordinance to allow applicants to submit to the city a waiver for the noise ordinance past 8 PM, and then the city staff says, okay, Magnus, you got in on August 1st, sorry Fisher Farms, you can't, that we've already got one that weekend, we've got one that night. I'm asking more of
the administrative side of it.
Administrative side that may not require them to come here every time, but allow for a few a year.
That's why we have this ordinance and this permit, so that they never have to come back here again. Now, in reality, it's not working. So the idea here is, what are the nuisance factors that event centers create, including Magnus, and then what can we do to try to alleviate those? So if the concern is noise, amplified noise, is it one time a year or is it one time a week?
Yeah. Exactly.
And what is the council willing to put up with?
One, and I think most people would agree that noise travels differently in the summer than the winter, and there's things like that take into consideration as well. But maybe you're not outside in the winter.
I am.
Yeah. Well,
I
not you.
48 chickens and 3 horses
Not you.
outside every day.
Not you. Those people
Yes.
with the amplified noise.
Yes,
Sorry.
the people with the amplified noise are probably not going to be out, but who knows?
So
It does seem like we have a hole.
that's.
If the requirement is 8 PM, I have no problem with, say, Magnus having 2 events a year that
Go
go to
past.
10, 11, we occasionally have, the Heritage Day goes till, what, 11?
Well, it's past 8.
It's past
Yeah.
8. And so it does seem like these, it does seem like we almost need something.
We missed something.
Yeah, it does seem like we missed something. 'Cause we want to occasionally allow it.
Yeah.
It's just we don't want it every single week.
That's just it. It's not, I don't mind once or twice a year. That's a complete non-issue. I just don't want it every week. And then Fisher Farms piling on every week, and then Dean's piling on every week. And now, again, I live not where I want to live. So.
It almost seems like, the IUP for the activity center, it almost seems like that's kind of the independent issue of this. But
Oh, yeah.
it seems like if somebody wants to violate that ordinance, they make a request. And I don't know if we simply have a hard and fast, you get 2 a year, or you gotta get approval. I'd rather not have approval from the council every time.
No,
Right.
that's stupid.
It just
Sure.
seems like,
Yep. So what I'll add, we do have a kind of a concentration of event centers in this part of town. So the idea is, if you, making up numbers, if you say you can have 2 a year or something, that's not going to work for a lot of event centers.
Well, it's the amplified noise outside past
Outside
8 p.m.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we did, like, I was not here for this. I was out there for that because I lived by these places. And that was one of the things was, we have no problem with amplified music during the day. It's that people have kids and families and we want to go to bed. And we don't want it every weekend. And so that was why we pushed and you all agreed that outside amplified noise stopped at 8 p.m. And I was fine with, fine,
Yep.
happy, yay. I also understand for some of these big things, like Heritage Days and like your big events, twice a year is not a big deal. Twice a year is not every weekend. And so, and if the reality is every single time you just say, hey, we want it, and the city says, oh, okay, then that 8 p.m. rule is utterly meaningless. That would be like if I just got to call the police station and be like, hey, I want to speed today. And they're like, sounds good, thanks for letting us know. Like, that's not how rules work, right? They're there for a reason. So I would say every event center gets twice a year that they can push past the 8 p.m. without like talking to anybody. Like, they just can happen. But maybe that has to go into the event center ordinance.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right home
Yeah.
for it. But I think this discussion is really helping with that future discussion and these ordinances all ordinances are work in progress,
Yes.
right? We find these situations, we can find ways to improve them,
But as far as Magnus having the standing event as it currently exists, I'm 100% on board with that. Like, absolutely no problems, great, yay, happy. I think we just need to work out this after 8 p.m. detail in such a way that meets your needs, but still, recognizing, again, we somehow wound up in the hotbed of event centers in Dayton, and how do we just account for that?
which is a separate discussion.
Issue.
Yeah.
That's and how does that happen? Well, that I can ask later. How I do that.
You mentioned you have 2 events planned that are past that 8 p.m.
Yes, one in August, one in September,
Okay.
and none for the rest of the year.
And so we're not going to solve this by those 2. So I think assuming we're going to approve this tonight, we stipulate that 2 for the remaining of the year past 8 p.m. Allow the 2, and then we figure out how to incorporate a change to our ordinance that allows. I don't like them having them willy-nilly. I think they should be submitting an application or a permit or something to the city so that the city's aware that they're not breaking the ordinance and the city can track them.
Yeah,
But
the law enforcement needs to know that
Yeah.
But-
it's happening, and I think if you're having a large event like that anyway, you probably let the police know because you're having all that traffic and all that, right? So it all kind of comes together, but I think part of it too then is just making sure that 3 venues don't all have an event on the same day going late, like it would tax the city.
Or is that better?
So,
I don't know, maybe.
Get it out of the way.
Related to this discussion but separate. So we do have an ordinance amendment that's in front of the council for specific to special events. Very similar to this, but it's not a planning or zoning permit. So that item's been tabled by the council, and staff need to rework the ordinance a little bit. But it addresses some of what you're speaking of.
Yeah.
So.
Do we make a motion
Well,
to?
this is a public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
So at 9:12, I'm going to open the public hearing. And is there anyone here to speak on this one? I think with that, we'll just.
Any comments online?
Yeah, any comments online? John's checking. We can kind of continue our discussion for a minute here. And
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Not hearing anything from Nate or Tomlinson.
With that, at 9:13, I will close the public hearing. Any further discussion?
So you had mentioned approving this, allowing these 2 events to occur, right? But I questioned the mechanism of that, whether or not we should even touch that, since there's an ordinance in place, right? So we're essentially going to approve an IUP for an event center with the condition that they can violate the ordinance twice. I think the city in general needs to wrestle with that one outside of potentially us. I think we can provide discussion to staff, and Dennis, you can share with city council on what planning commission seems to be appropriate for that number, but I don't know that it's tied to this actual item, right, per se. I don't know that we should be saying, yes, you can violate the ordinance twice with your event center IUP, right?
I would not recommend.
Right,
that.
okay. But I think the discussion is very worthwhile to have.
But they could still come through for a special event like that. That
Yeah,
mechanism
so
exists.
the events that are happening in August and September, those are going to happen with a special event.
Yeah, so that's
Permit, so
right,
those
thank
are
you, separate.
outside of this.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Then
we are
we don't need to address them.
No, we're just approving this, but we're acknowledging that for next summer,
Yeah.
we need to have this sorted out so that for next summer it can just happen without having to go through all the because that was the point of becoming an event center, was so you didn't have to go through this every time. So,
Yep.
but that gives us till next summer. I mean, that gives us a little bit of wiggle room. We don't have to have it figured out today, because the two that are happening have already been taken care of.
Yeah, so the whole, part of the whole idea, one of the requirements of an event center, IUP for an event center, is the applicant has to create an emergency response plan to anything that could go wrong. And that's reviewed administratively by police and fire and all that. So that's the concern that we're trying to address. That doesn't address noise. That's how do you get people
Safely.
evacuated from the property.
I mean, I motion to approve that the event
I
center.
have a question though.
Oh.
So one of the requests of the applicant is grass parking, whereas the ordinance requires a hard surface or improved parking. And I'm just going to say improved, such as gravel. We have two IUPs for event centers. So Fisher Farms has a gravel parking lot. Dean's Pumpkins does not.
And might I add that when the city has events, they use grass parking.
Yeah. I struggle with this because it's an event, the events don't happen every day, all day, every day. And you put gravel out here, we're taking away green space, we're taking away natural environment to put in gravel. Gravel washes out. I think, I drove by Fisher Farms, I think they might have had an issue with gravel staying in place, right? Vegetation helps that stuff stay in place. I think the nuisance comes if it gets super muddy and it's tracking onto the roadway. Again, the city's got mechanisms in place to get them to clean that up. And it's an interim use permit, and the city could likely have a discussion about, well, you might need, if they're unwilling already at the request, to put in a gravel approach to help knock some of that dirt down.
Which there is a gravel approach.
Sure.
Yes.
I think there's a difference too. I think Fisher Farms, their business model is to have
People come regularly.
weekend events
Yeah.
in a more regular basis, where this is more of a couple time a year use. The Heritage Days is one time a use. Dean's Pumpkin Patch is one time a year.
Pretty
They
seasonal,
might-
yeah.
seasonal, short-term things that are grass parking as opposed to weekly events.
I mean, I think at a certain point, it will take care of itself. Because if it does turn out that renting it out to other places and it's used more frequently, then the grass is going to die real fast and you're going to have nothing but mud, and then those people aren't going to want to come because
Yep.
like that. So then your business so I think to me it's a as long as the gravel approach is there, which it is, the rest of it is a non-issue. And I prefer grass to gravel for long-term use anyway.
Especially on the north side of the lake,
Yeah.
I do
or
recall.
on any side of the lake, not just the north side, but.
I thought I recalled on Fisher Farms, there was gravel for a certain area and then there was
Yeah.
grass overflow, which is actually the way I'm reading how they're using this.
Yeah.
They have gravel for their everyday use and then
Grass
grass overflow.
Yeah.
So it would get used a whole lot less frequently.
Yes,
Yeah.
and but I want to clarify that as, it's the overflow parking is the grass. And I think this one and Dean's are unique because they are kind of somewhat grandfathered in as event centers, where Fisher Farms was brand new. And so there's a little difference there in how we interpret the code as far as gravel or hard surface parking. And I think the overflow is the key
Yeah.
with this one.
Well, and that's what you guys keep telling me, right? It's every applicant is an individual, and you have to look at the individual
Yep.
situation. And Fisher Farms, their long-term goal is to have regular events like on a weekly basis. That is not Magnus's long-term goal. That is not Dean's long-term goal, right? So like the long-term goals are very different.
Yep.
Plus, also Fisher Farms has an additional business of like the orchard and the anticipation of people coming regularly, and they're selling eggs and they're having the movie, like there's just a lot more people more frequently. It's a different situation.
Yep.
So
Right. Where
I'm
the
fine
gravel
with it.
makes sense in that situation.
Yes. Where this, I think, I'm fine with it as is. I don't need.
Yeah, I'm almost afraid of if we had forced gravel on
Oh,
here,
God.
we'd create a nuisance that was unnecessary,
Yeah.
because trying to keep all that gravel in place can be challenging.
Yeah.
So I think we're all on the same page
Hey,
with that.
John, so does the activity ordinance require improved surfaces?
IEP ordinance does, yes.
Okay, so are we in the same boat? We are going to approve something that automatically
Oh, yeah,
doesn't?
so I think if this is the direction, the planning commission, the council, I think
Change the ordinance?
change the ordinance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
So we have two things to change the ordinance for.
Yes.
I'm sure that we'll add
That'll be
to it. I'm pretty sure.
Is someone keeping the list? Should I keep the list?
Restrooms have quite, or porta potties have quite the setback, so that's, yeah.
One of the reasons they have quite that setback.
You're going to do a motion?
I make a motion to approve Magnus as an event center. That's right.
Okay.
Right?
I'll second.
We have a motion.
3 conditions with this, so just to make sure everyone understands what they're voting for. So, condition 1, prior to operation by the event center, the applicant shall submit an emergency response plan for review and acceptance by city staff. 2, the event center shall operate according to the city code. Exception, off-street parking may be on an unimproved surface such that it does not significantly impact surface drainage. If there's the desire to allow amplified music past 8 o'clock, that should also be written in here as a condition. Item 3 is the interim use permit for the event center shall expire concurrently with the interim use permit for a veterans outpatient facility on January 26, 2041, or when the veterans outpatient facility use ceases operation for a period of 1 year, whichever occurs first. This ties into the previous IUP for the Veterans Outpatient Center. So it's very unique to this, this use or this permit. So when the original IUP was approved, I think it was a 30-year permit that was approved for. So this just ties the two together. So again, if there's a desire to, whatever you want to do for amplified music, if it's different than what's the 8 p.m., then that should be a condition that it's allowed under whatever circumstances.
But we already said that they could submit a special.
There is a workaround existing for that.
A special
It
event
is,
permit.
it's
So
just not,
So we don't.
doesn't
and
follow the
We
zoning.
don't want to tie that to this IUP.
Okay.
And if we're gonna amend the amendment,
It'd be better
There
to
are-
do it that way than
Yes.
to say you can do it twice and then amend the code that says, no, now you can do it 3 times.
yes.
So I have a question about this whole parking thing. It says, if no buildings are present for the event center, then parking will be determined by city staff. My understanding is the actual buildings of Magnus Center, that's not for the event, like the events are,
Right, so I guess that could change those. So let's say the buildings are used for, well, I'm going to think the storage buildings, the barns and all that, have the potential of being used in conjunction with any of the events that are happening.
but the event's not gonna happen in that storage building. The event's happening outside.
You might have vendors that are inside the storage building.
They occasionally do in the
Yeah.
big barn. But, yeah, generally the events are outside unless it's raining, in which case they quickly, but
But I'm just saying, you already have that in there, so like, you could make that argument, which is what I'm making.
Okay.
Okay, we're fine.
We have a motion and a second. The conditions have been read. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes 4-0. August 27th?
Yes, and if I could, that was Nick and Paul, that was the first motion and second. No, I'm sorry.
Sarah
motioned, I seconded.
Sorry.
Paul second.
Okay.
All right. Item 9C.
Moving along. Okay.
Thank you.
This is a concept plan for the Holland property, so 11085 French Lake Road. This is kind of a unique project because it straddles the Dayton-Champlin border. Otherwise, it'd be pretty simple. So the concept plan, once again, we're in development. You start out with a concept plan, which is just a sketch on a napkin of, what do you think of this? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What do you want to change? So that's what the developer is doing. So again, what is unique about this project, the development is 15 lots. 2 of the lots are in Dayton, the rest of it is in Champlin. In addition to the 2 lots, the stormwater ponding is on the Dayton side. How we're going to coordinate that, I don't know exactly, but we'll work that out. So Again, with the whole project, 15 lots, this is the city boundary between Dayton and Champlin. We have 2 lots plus a fraction of other lots that would be primarily on the Champlin side. One of the questions for the council is going to be annexation, or detachment and annexation of moving essentially the city's boundary to follow the lot lines, or to move the whole project from Dayton into Champlin, or to go to the applicant and say, you know, we like straight lines, you need to make your lot straight and keep the boundary the way it is. If there's any opinions the commission has on any of this, this would be the time to do it. Things that we don't know about the project, and I'll just add that this came in fairly last minute. We don't know what the intended zoning is, if it's going to be R1, R3, or a PUD. So as the commission knows, with the PUD, everything becomes flexible. But the intention is that with the PUD, there's some kind of a public benefit to the project. So in the staff report, I'm giving the example of additional buffering along French Lake Road. So we have other PUDs elsewhere in the city where we do have a probably 35-foot landscape buffer along county roads. This would be an example along French Lake Road or County Road 121. Other critical items is access to French Lake Road. There is no proposed access on the Dayton side. All access would come off of, I can't think of the name of the street now, but it's the existing street on Champlin. I think of this as what used to be French Lake Road before.
It is French Lake Road.
Before the creek crossed. So once you come into the neighborhood, the street name changes.
Brookside Trail.
Brookside Trail, there you go.
It's Elm Creek Crossing and French Lake, yeah.
Okay. So with the concept plan, what we typically ask for developers is if there's a significant amount of undeveloped land that's adjacent to it, show us potentially how that could develop so we have an idea of where street connections should occur. So the developer did do that on both the Champlin and the Dayton side. One concern that we have as staff is if there is no access, all these homes, which I want to say is around 200, would have one access point onto French Lake Road. Alternatively, there could be a second road, and I think this is kind of showing it off of Arrowwood. There's not enough stacking space to have a good intersection with there. It would have to, or should, have kind of an S-curve, and that potentially affects how these 2 lots might be laid out or how that street is angled. So, but that's me trying to summarize this quickly. So again, kind of the main factors that I kind of hit upon with the concept plan is the municipal boundary adjustment of should the city boundary be redrawn, and if so, how? What is the appropriate lot sizes and zoning? So we have 2 lots out of 15. It'd be really simple to call this a PUD and just say, okay, the majority of the project is in Champlin. We're going to follow the Champlin's ordinance, wherever that is. Or vice versa. But I also want you to look at the big picture of, you know, this is a bigger project. Not all of it is in Champlin. There's a significant amount of it that's in Dayton. And then also the access onto French Lake Road. With the concept plan, there is no formal approval or denial process. The 4 of you all have your own individual opinions. They can completely conflict with the next person's. And I don't believe we have the developer here. Yes, we do. Yeah. Nate. And then I don't know. I know Nathan Fair is out of town. I would bet that he'll have input or things to add that I'm missing.
All right. I guess any clarifying questions for staff? This is a public hearing, so.
I have no questions at this time.
I don't have any questions. You can open up for public hearing and see if there's anybody here to talk.
Okay.
Actually, sorry, one question. Where is this, sorry if it's already been said, where is this in the process with the city of Champlin? Has it been to their planning commission?
I'm gonna lean on Nathan. I don't believe it's gone anywhere. It might be the reason, we might have some technical problems why we've not heard verbally from anybody.
So,
I was just curious
yeah,
if Champlin's
it
had.
looks like one comment might have gotten added, John.
Okay.
Maybe you could promote him. He's the only one left. Promote him to give him full. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's more audio related, but well, was the only one.
Nathan, can you hear us?
Oh, no, it's gone.
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay.
No, he's over in panelists now.
Oh, okay.
Scooch over, click on panelists. Down just a bit, right there. Yeah, he's in there now. Still didn't help.
Is your sound turned up on the other computer? The laptop's not connected to anything.
All right.
Okay.
His microphone did go up and down, but we can't
Yeah,
hear
he's,
him.
yeah,
So,
he's talking right now.
all right, with that, I'm gonna open the public hearing at 9:30 while we figure out this,
Okay.
9:31, while we figure out this technical issue.
It's like the planning commission survivor.
You should have
I'll
been here,
quit,
you should have
I'll
been here in
pass,
June.
It was a 5-hour meeting last June.
Yeah.
It was packed all the way out
Do we
there.
have some stuff to go over then with you?
Name-
We gotta get up to,
Right.
no.
Name and address, please.
My name is Tracy Adet. I am a Champlin resident, so thank you for having us. 10809 Brookside Trail.
And I'm Lindsay Eden, also a Champlin resident. I'm at 10934 Brookside Trail.
So, as a development and additional housing, we don't have a concern, and much of our concern will be with Champlin when the time comes. We've started conversations with them as well, but we just thank you for the opportunity to let you know what our concerns are. And really, our major concern is one that you had on the board as well, and it's the access to County Road 121. We purchased our land to build in that lot February of 2015, and at that time, when Champlin had approved the development and finalized the plat, they made note that eventually we are going to need a second access to this development. We currently have 111 homes in there. We have been working with the city of Champlin and Hennepin County. You may have seen our stop signs. That's been 6 years of advocacy for our neighborhood. We've had some very serious accidents at that intersection. The stop signs are not a permanent solution. And so we kind of feel like when we got this, felt like we're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse here. We don't even have the one access to our neighborhood finished. We don't have a solution to the safety issues that we currently have. And now we're looking at adding more homes. We had some questions just as a homeowners association without a separate entrance to the development. Are we then assuming them into ours, which is, fine, whatever, but that doesn't help us with the safety of that intersection and just the amount of traffic and snow plows and everything that would have to be coming through. So that is our main concern, is that we have a secondary access for these homes. You look at the Gross plat, and I know that is just, in the future somewhere. But if we don't have the infrastructure first in place, and now we're just adding homes on, we're gonna have a much bigger issue than we already have. And like I said, we've been advocating for 6 years for that the one entrance that we have. And until that shovel hits the ground, I'm not really, I'll believe it when I see it. Hope to not be in the grave by then.
I'm trying to remember, the roundabout, was that this season, this construction season?
It was, well,
I think it's in design now, it's probably
Oh.
going to be constructed next year. I haven't followed the
Yeah.
schedule with it, I don't know where they're sitting, but they did authorize a design on it, I know.
the stop signs were meant to be a pilot
Mhm.
with the potential for a roundabout. They funded for it, we heard, it was supposed to come in 2024, now we're hearing 2025. I've had a question out to Kevin Anderson from the county on an update and haven't received one back. I know our ward member in Champlin has tried as well and not getting clear direction. Are those stop signs temporary? Is a roundabout coming? We're still in the dark.
So we understand that a lot of this is Champlin, and, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. You spoke to Scott.
Scott Schultz. I got an email from Scott Schultz by way of Jessica Tilsdale, our board member. Because some of our concerns, like Tracy mentioned, is with a city split here, garbage, mail, emergency services, all of that, potentially school district or school boundaries, then would put more traffic onto our neighborhood roads if we have a different city for, what would it first be, 2 houses?
Can I ask a question, right? Just clarifying your concern, as it is like 2 houses right now.
Yeah.
Your concern with the 15, your concern necessarily of adding, in addition to the 110 homes, if I heard you correctly, 112, is not necessarily the 15 that is being proposed today. It's the ghost plating on either side and the kind of final complete neighborhood and the entrance.
Yeah.
I mean,
So this was before, of course, the Berry Farm, but this was supposed to be the, Cedar Ridge was supposed to go out of the neighborhood and get us out onto French Lake on that side. And the way that they have it drawn, once you build those houses in there, like you were saying, someone was saying, where does that road, where does it go? Like where does it?
So like even with your ghost plots here, there is no exits. So if we expand this to 200, are all of those houses now coming up through one exit?
and that's more what I was driving at, is your concern is not necessarily, and obviously, right, we're on the Dayton side of this line. Your concern isn't the 15 homes that's being presented today, it's the ghost plating on either side and the access to and from and that.
Yeah, just kind of like where, if we do this, where do we go from here? Because you're locked in once those houses are there.
Yep.
And we don't have a solution on the one entrance to our neighborhood that we have. And so it's kind of like we're piling onto a problem that has not been solved yet.
We understand that.
Yeah. So, kind of my
It does seem really odd
perspective.
they put that right on a curve like that. Doesn't that seem odd, geez?
That entrance.
Yeah,
Oh,
the main entrance.
Yeah. Perfect for a roundabout in the future. It'll be, my thoughts and concerns really do come with that ghost
I know
plat
everybody
too.
hates the stop signs, but we also hated our children getting in.
For these two from the public, any other clarifying
No.
questions? I just had a clarifying question. I know we have some more folks here. Thank
Are
you.
you guys gonna talk, or?
Would you like to?
Too tired.
I would like to.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Appreciate
come on
your
up.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to add to, so the comments that you made are what we hear at every month.
Okay.
So this is a common struggle.
So I didn't have to sit here for 30 minutes?
That's,
I would have liked to know that.
name and address?
I'm Nick Friedenberg. I live at 11411, 129th Avenue North in Dayton. So, all along there, they've been trying to develop our properties. When the city sewer and water went through, I was going to have them put more hookups for my property. They've already done that. on their own. Excuse me.
Just for clarity, which one is your property?
I'm in one of the ghost ones to the west.
Okay, to the west. Okay.
So at that time, Dayton already had plans on developing all that in the future. When it happens, they put in infrastructure for sewer and water hookups, which I was gonna pay out of my pocket, but they did it on their own time. And at that time, they said they wanted all the, roads, intersections to line up. So we got Zachary, got Arrowwood. So this is what they got going there. Does not make no sense. It ain't gonna affect me. They just punch it out to the 121. Just as me being in Dayton and, because I sure wouldn't want 120 houses coming through a residential when they can poke it right out to the road, right there on their own development. They can move the pond, they can redesign it, they can do anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's all, what's been discussed with city sewer and water. We shouldn't even be discussing how they're gonna access these properties. Darren Ziggs, all your information there, a lot of the owners don't even live there anymore. It's not up to date, but, got 2 acres in Dayton, there's a city hookup for it right now, in sewer.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else like to come forward? All right. With that, I think we'll close the public hearing at 9:41. Just open it up for.
That was me.
Yeah.
Oh.
He asked if he could go sooner.
Oh.
So before
It's too late.
Magnus.
What?
Before Magnus, so we're past it.
Oh. Apologies.
All right, so from my perspective on the concept
Well,
plan,
let's just go down the line. I think since we can just give our comments and they can contrast and back and forth.
yeah, I'm down the line.
We'll start with Nick and go Sarah and then Paul and then myself.
The comments we heard from the public here, I think, really capture kind of my initial thoughts on it, and I'll note that Stantec did a good job of capturing those in their comment memo as well. The development that they're in needs another access to 129. It can't come through, in my opinion, this Dayton parcel because it wouldn't line up with any intersections on the north side of 129. So Hennepin County is likely going to want the accesses to occur where a current access is. So the parcel that we're looking at right now probably won't get punched to 129, and it would occur, that access would occur somewhere within the ghost plats. But the S-curve bringing the roadway north really, really close to the county road, or 121, I'm sorry, not 129, 121. Bring it really close to 121 does a couple of things. There's no stacking whatsoever potentially on the roadway connection within the ghost plat in Dayton. So we're hearing that they really, really need another access to the county road, but they're not given any stacking length. I don't know that it should S-curve up as much as that alignment of the roadway could probably stay more east-west on its on the direction that it is through the Champlin ghost plat, stay on that alignment. And that would do a couple of things too. I think it would allow for the stormwater pond to not only be burdened almost entirely by the city of Dayton. So that stormwater pond, as it's proposed, primarily benefits Champlin, and it's located entirely in Dayton. So from a tax base standpoint, Dayton's getting a stormwater pond for the most part here. I think it could be more equally distributed, have that road not cut north and S-curve to the north. You could get a couple of lots to the north in Dayton, and maybe that storm pond could be rearranged a little bit to be a little more equitable there. But I really think the primary concern is the future access onto 121 won't work with the way that S-curve brings it north now. And if it's approved this way and built this way, it'd have to come back, like John had suggested, which could be fine, I suppose. But I would like to see the ghost plat revised to reflect something like that, because this area definitely needs another exit. And one without any stacking is going to be a problem.
Good? Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I think buffering along the main county road should be maintained from the existing community. You know, those houses are really set back. There's berms, there's trees, there's fencing. You know, that should be continued. So I think that primary road with the two little cul-de-sacs, you know, if that just continued and you just did a couple more cul-de-sacs in Dayton, you know, to keep the lots along the road the same. It could be nice, and then that provides the stacking because you just open up between a couple lots and you get that extra exit entry point if it happens to be in Dayton. But I agree, it should align with another road on the north so you can have a true intersection, which would be safer for everybody, as opposed to just, you know, the county doesn't want a bunch of random entry points anyway. So alignment of that is pretty critical, I think, for safety. In general, this development absolutely needs two entry points. I appreciate all your effort already to get that stop sign there. I've tried to stop for pedestrians there a few times, and I felt like I was going to get rear-ended. So then I don't stop for pedestrians because I don't want to get rear-ended, because nobody's looking for that, right? So it's super dangerous. So thank you for your efforts that you've put forth already in that. In general, I mean, I think it's kind of short-sighted to even show this concept plan where you're cutting a house with a city property line. I mean, it's got to align. So whether you redraw your lots to fit the existing city lines, which I think you should just do. I don't know what the process is to change city boundaries, but it seems like just drawing your properties to match the city boundaries would be the most straightforward way to do that. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Same, need better access. I don't love the stop sign as the person who drives there, but I get it.
Sorry.
It's fine.
I've been trying.
I get it. I totally get it. But yeah, it's safety first. It's only going to grow. There's only going to be more traffic, and I don't understand why. There's no reason that they can't have the lot lines line up with the city lines. There's just no reason. And yeah, thanks for the stormwater pond. There's nothing here that makes me excited. And that this is this doesn't in any way, shape, or form benefit the city of Dayton. And yes, there's the ghost plat, and maybe once the ghost plat happens, then that stormwater pond would serve all those properties. But that is who knows when down the road, and this just feels. It just seems. I'm not excited by this, and I don't think it benefits us.
Point two about the trash service and stuff should be
That was
reiterated.
going to be mine. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you do it then.
I was gonna add a few things. Just, I mean, obviously the roadway alignment through here is not ideal at all even for ghost platting, because it doesn't allow for the one to the ghost platting in Champlin makes sense, right? There's a connection already on the other side that it aligns up well with. The ghost platting on the west side in Dayton doesn't allow for any flexibility of that lot to provide that stacking, to provide the needs that we would envision. Now, the only argument to that is if that owner had a plan that was kind of already in the books at this point, then maybe it's a little different. I have two concerns with this development. We're developing a 2.5 acre, we'll call it 2.5 acre parcel in Dayton for 2 lots. And we just heard earlier tonight that we might be going to a 1 to 4. Right?
Well, you're talking about density, so
Yes.
4 units per acre.
4 units per acre. And here we're going 2 units on 2.5 acres in the city of Dayton, and giving up that stormwater pond.
I don't think the pond counts against that.
It
doesn't go in the net calc.
The pond doesn't go in the net calc, but for 2 houses, we don't need that large of a stormwater pond. and therefore we can develop more houses on this property is where I'm
Our
going at.
city's numbers.
Yes, and so what's shown here, back to Nick's point, is should we be taking the burden of this pond when we could, is that the best use of this land, the way it's shown for the city? And that's where I was headed with that one. Lastly, and then, but on the flip side, does the annex conversation then change our density calcs by getting rid of this land as a city? And so I think there's more to this that we need to investigate as a city on what we want to do in the interim. I definitely think that this needs to be coordinated well with the city of Champlin. We have, in my neighborhood in Dayton, we have Maple Grove neighborhood that connects only to our neighborhood. I believe there's like 50 homes back there. There's a connection soon to be to another part of Dayton, but they don't have any access in and out of Maple Grove. And so I get your concerns of, especially with 2 homes, of garbage trucks and snow plows and all that. So all that stuff needs to be worked out with the city. I believe down there, down in our neighborhood, there was some agreements, developer agreements and city agreements on that. I think it's easy enough with 2 homes, but just making note that we need to get that stuff figured out if we're going to develop 2 homes and leave them as Dayton addresses.
The Champlin side of this development would be best served when the lots to the east all develop at the same time, and you do that whole area at one time.
Yes.
And you just complete it, and you get a connection to the county road, and then the 2 lots in Dayton can develop when the rest of the Dayton side develops.
That would be the ideal scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have them just 2 separate neighborhoods. Like we can have a Dayton neighborhood over here, and you can have your, and then you don't have to worry about the plows and the garbage and all that stuff, and you can have your access points.
Yeah. I will make a comment on HOAs just because we've heard that prior. We heard it, I believe, at the last meeting. Typically, assuming they're using the same builder or same style of builder, typically they're a standalone HOA until they're fully built out, and then you guys can decide to let them in or not, or work with that builder. That's what we heard at the last meeting.
There was just something about the monument at the entrance, because they wouldn't have a.
Yeah, and so that's something I think with the developer, what we heard at the last one is the developer, it was a Pulte neighborhood in the last one, but it was the developer holds the HOA through the build out, and then they turn it over to their residents and they can decide whether they join or not together. And so that's something that can be worked out.
Yeah.
For you guys.
And that's so low on the list of things we care about.
Understood.
Yeah.
Just something that I picked up on.
Well, the aesthetic of the homes in this neighborhood are distinct and have a character to them too. I'd hope these developments would follow that same line.
We have Jonathan homes in our development, so it would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't pick up the sound from the audience.
Oh, okay.
Lastly, I had one more. On 121, as we follow the development that we're connecting into, they have a nice berm, nice landscape, nice wide areas. I would like to see that continue through the Dayton area. I get it, they're 2 separate cities, but to most people driving through, it's not people don't necessarily care where the city limit lines are. It's the aesthetics of it's still a neighborhood.
You drive down the rest of this road towards Pineview and on Fernbrook, and it's tree lined. And,
And Champlin's likely to have them carry a similar aesthetic
That-
through it.
Yeah.
So it'd be
And on the
weird if
Champlin
we
lots, you
developed
can see
different.
you can see they have room to do that with the roadway. They don't.
I don't want that roadway there, and I don't want a row of just solid fence like we have on the other side of South Hyman, like
Right.
from this year.
So.
It would make more sense to have the Champlin side develop with the existing neighborhood, and then they could go straight north to Burr Oak. Like there would be a nice, like already existing intersection, and then the Dayton side develops when that west side develops, and it would be its own neighborhood. And like you could.
They could still connect.
They could still connect, but like it would also be a cleaner line, and then they could go straight north to either Arrow Lane, would probably make the most sense to like have an intersection, and it wouldn't be that close, like, yeah, I just.
So the challenge with it, this is one property owner, so I'm just saying following that would take the Dayton side of the parcel out of the project.
But I mean, it's two parcels. It's not one parcel, it's two parcels.
Well,
One property owner for two parcels.
You have, someone happens to own two adjacent parcels, but it's also possible someone owns two parcels that are nowhere near each other, and you have to develop those two parcels separately. They just happen to be next to each other, but like, that. Again, I go back to like, our job is not to make sure property owners make as much money as possible. Our job is to make sure that we do the best thing for the city. So I'm sorry that you bought properties that were adjacent in two separate cities. Like, that's just, they're in two separate cities. You had to expect that this wasn't gonna be the most easy thing in the world.
okay. Nathan, maybe this is gonna work. I don't know if you- Okay,
All right.
so Nathan, we've tried, I can't figure out why we don't have sound. I'm sure it's something simple.
Is there a phone line somewhere?
Yeah.
Well, I think we've provided plenty of feedback. I don't, in my opinion, I don't know that any additional information from the applicant would change my opinion.
No.
Nick?
No.
Paul?
No, we're good. We're good.
I think with that, we're gonna move on to item 10.
All right.
Did you get enough?
I would ask the applicant if they've gotten everything that they were hoping for, but I can't.
We can
do
certainly
that.
review, we'd be happy to review another concept plan. So, I think we should move on.
Okay, we'll move on. Okay, exciting stuff.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, good night.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, staff updates. Items that are up and coming, so I couldn't tell you if this is going to be the September meeting, but this is kind of what the agenda is looking at so far, or somewhat. So, kind of in order of procedures, Tuesday, August 27th, we have a joint workshop or work session between Planning Commission and City Council to discuss the master plan. So the master plan is about a 1 square mile area. We started this project a little more than a year ago, and the hope is, or the desire is, to try to finish this up soon. So with the master plan, there's going to be 3 options presented to the council and commission. Oh, yeah, there we go. And you will be asked to make a decision that's going to affect potentially 5,000 homeowners permanently. So, there it is.
Come prepared is what you're saying?
Come prepared. Yep, that is what I'm saying. DCM Farms concept plan, I do not have, so I should say, this was reviewed by the commission in June. The developer's intent is to revise the concept plan based on comments heard from the commission and the council, as well as some of the requests by the neighbors. So they should be submitting a revised concept plan, which I would anticipate would come back to the commission in September. Dayton Creek Edition. So this is in southwest Dayton. This came before the Planning Commission over a year ago. This is a mixed-use development. What the mix is, we do not know. The developer does not know. The developer will be proposing all outlots where the use will be determined at a future date. So the developer's intent is to plat the road and build the road now, which is going to make the project more marketable.
Is that, so when we last looked at that, was that a concept plan, or was he just trying to get a feel for where we wanted the roads, or? 'cause
Neither
it
one.
sounds-
Or all.
I think it started as a pre-plat, but then he kept giving extensions and it just sat for so long. I think their original submittal was like May of last year.
Yeah. Well, I know he was having a hard time, well,
Yeah. I'll say there's a lot of environmental hurdles to jump through in this part of town.
Are the apartments going through? Are they making
Oh.
progress?
The next one.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
you're jumping
thank
the
you.
gun there. Okay. Parkway neighborhood, same part of town, different project. So currently, this project is under an EAW review, so an environmental assessment worksheet. So that's a 30-day review by the State Environmental Quality Board. That ends in,
Published within the last 2 weeks.
published a couple weeks ago,
I think.
a couple more weeks to go. So this would come before, or is likely to come before the commission in September, as long with everything that's on this list. So a comprehensive plan amendment regarding sewer staging, a zoning map amendment to rezone from agricultural to planning and development, as well as a planning, and a preliminary and final plat. So in the EAW, this is planned for 650 units of apartments, and plus a little bit of commercial and retail. What else? Cannabis licensing. So this is newer, and I'm going to say I don't know a whole lot about it, so I'm not going to pretend here. So generally speaking, what the commission will be asked for is where should you be able to sell cannabis in Dayton? Other things, items that would go straight to city council and bypass planning commission are final plat. So, and I'm going to back up. First and foremost, we have a public opinion survey which the council approved. This is going to be conducted by the Morris Leatherman Company. So this is what do you think about Dayton on a large number of different topics? So as a scientific survey, the contractor is randomly choosing 400 phone numbers to call. So whether you have a landline, cell phone number, it doesn't matter, they'll find you. The idea is it's equally representative, so they'll have an equal proportion of, I'm going to say, younger adults versus middle-aged versus older adults in different parts of the city. They have a pattern of how they figure this out. So it's, again, like they've got a system, they have to follow it. I would imagine there's going to be a lot of residents that they want to express their opinion, but they don't get a phone call. So you don't always get chosen with this. And I want to say this is going to happen starting today over probably a couple-week period, or as long as it takes until they hit that 400 number.
So answer those random numbers that you get on your cell phone.
So interestingly, so the interview takes time. What they will do is they will call you, and if you don't have time, they'll ask you to make an appointment to talk again. And we'll go through each item, and there's about 100 or so questions. So it will take some time to go through, but it's...
Is the city in any way advertising that this is happening to Peter's point about, because I don't answer random numbers. Are you kidding? I don't answer any random number.
So let's say if you were chosen as one of the 400 and you don't answer your phone, it's going to go to the next person that fits your demographic.
Okay.
John, I don't think we had approved the final questions yet, so I don't know that it's starting today.
It started today.
Wouldn't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Because we did not approve the final questions. Okay, well, I'll talk to Zach.
Okay. Other items. So we mentioned earlier, we have an ordinance amendment for a large assembly permit. So this is intended for, generally speaking, one-time events that are not necessarily interim use permit. So not necessarily if I'm going to have a party in my backyard, but if I'm going to have a party, invite everybody else there, that would be a special, one-time special event permit. So that was an item that was presented to the council at the last meeting, or maybe a couple meetings ago, and was tabled. And then we have final plats for Sundance Green's 11th edition. So this was recently approved by the city council, and the developer has decided to adjust some property lines, so it's going to come back to the council. And then we have Riverwalk 3rd edition off of Dayton River Road. Yeah, that's it. It's only things that are happening in the city.
Thank you, John. It was nice to. It's nice to see when the final plats are coming through. So, or that kind of stuff. Any other notices or announcements?
There's a primary on August 13th, and everyone should vote.
And for those still watching at home, when is Dayton Heritage Days?
Third weekend in September.
Third weekend in September, all right.
And as of today, there's still Friday events being planned.
So, with that,
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.